This episode is brought to you by Actually Debates. If you spend any time on the internet, you've definitely encountered the bane of any social media butterfly. People who use this amazing technology just to be wrong in public. Undoubtedly, you've employed every tried and true standard form of argumentation to purge those bad takes without success. You've tried Aristotelian, you've tried Toulmin and Rogerian, you've tried snark, derision, shaming, and gaslighting, but still those erroneous viewpoints keep coming back. For the really tough logical disputes, you can't rely on your parents' brand of refutation. You need the universal squabble solution to make those pesky boneheads of contention instantly change their tune. Semantics. Nothing makes a beclouder of the popular will hang his head in shame like pointing out what Webster's dictionary stipulates regarding the meaning of epistemology, or democracy, or obscenity, or harassment, or trespassing, or restraining order. Actually Debates gives you the tools you need to shut down fallacious propaganda 8 to 16 hours a day and to leave an impression when you represent yourself in court. And use the promo code REREAD, one word, to receive a complimentary lockpicking kit, the standard equipment of serious dialectic disputers. And thank you, Actually Debates, for sponsoring the Rereading Wolf podcast. This episode is brought to you by the support of generous listeners just like you. You can learn how to be one of them at patreon.com/rereadingwolf. And thank you, listener patrons, for supporting the Rereading Wolf podcast.
Warning. The following discussion is deliberately riddled with spoilers and unhinged speculation on this nearly 40-year-old book, Gene Wolfe's The Book of the New Sun. You can't read a Gene Wolfe story. You can only reread a Gene Wolfe story.
Welcome to Rereading Wolf. We don't pretend that this is the first time you and we have read these books. We want to understand them in as much detail as possible, and that means considering the works as a whole.
Hi, I'm James Wynn.
And I'm Craig Brewer.
Hi, Craig.
Hello, hello, hello. How are you, sir?
Oh, well, you know, we're still deep in the play.
It's a downtime for James. I'm sorry.
So I just slogging forward. And it's not just me, though, right? There's a lot of frustration at our pace making it through this play.
I think that's probably true.
What can I say? You know, we're moving as fast as we know how. Nudist says he's preparing a niche sub podcast where he'll discuss episodes about the play in the same way that we do. He says, okay, we've made it past the 5-minute mark on the first episode of the play.
The commentary upon the commentary upon the commentary.
Yeah. But honestly, I mean, we're moving into more plot-driven parts of the play, I think, and things are going to move faster. We'll get out of this thing, I think, in 2 more episodes.
Yes, and we kind of, as we finished up this one, we made a pact for ourselves to try and cap it at 5. So I think I even posted something about that just because, they're getting long. And even after we recorded the 4th one, the one you're listening to now, part of me was kind of like, oh, we're still moving slow. But I think the last, like part 5 is still a long scene, but it's all pretty much one scene. And there's a little less of the sort of big scale allegorical things going on. It feels a little bit more like it's kind of commenting on stuff.
Exactly. It feels more like, well, I mean, I think it feels more like an event in some way. Mm-hmm. So I think this is, we're moving okay. Don't lose faith, people. No, it's all right.
We will do that. And we're even just behind the scenes, we're even working on the next real chapter too. So there's hope.
Speaking of things behind the scene, should we go ahead and publicize that we have a tentative date?
Yes, sure. So
our official Worldcon panel?
The official panel. I have been explicitly told by Worldcon not to say what the tentative schedule is. So here's what the tentative schedule is. Our official panel for Worldcon is going to be held Sunday morning at 10 a.m., which that's the time they've given us for right now. That could all change in a week.
That's why they don't want us to tell you,
But that's good news, because then what that means is that James and I can start to set up a schedule for Friday, Saturday, which is when I think we're going to try and hold all of our official Shadow of the Con things is Friday afternoon, evening, and Saturday primarily. And then if anyone's still around on Sunday, awesome. We'll hang out. We'll figure out what we can do. Or if you're around earlier on Friday, we'll definitely get together. We haven't decided quite specifics yet. But that
Right,
does remind me also a couple things. Remember, if you do want to try and write a story for our little short story contest of sorts about Agia's backstory,
right.
we've gotten a couple entries, but it would be nice to have more.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
even if you are not a writer, that doesn't matter. Just go nuts. Remember,
at this point, you have a very good chance of walking away with some kind of a prize. So
yes, indeed.
You should not miss the opportunity.
Yep.
Don't say, well, gosh, I don't know. What's the point? I can't write anything good enough. You probably can write something good enough to win something.
Oh yeah. This is all for fun. So we're not going to sit there and be like, you didn't spend 2 years getting an MFA, obviously, because you didn't do this one. No, none of that.
Right.
But no, so we're going to try and see if we could get Ada Palmer or Joan Gordon or Michael Swanwick, who right now are tentatively going to be on that main panel. Maybe we can get them to come by for something during the day. We'll see, because obviously Worldcon is a huge, big thing with lots and lots of stuff going on. But we'll also try to set up a keynote of sorts for Mark. I don't know exactly what we're going to do. Remember that Frug set us up to do a little book club of sorts. So start reading Seven American Nights, either first time or again. If you're
ready to deliver. Yeah.
Yep. And if you can't make it out there, don't worry. We're going to try and record as much as we can, make it available. I don't know how we'll be on streaming stuff. I don't know if we really got all the technology to do that, but who knows? We'll know. But we are going to try and record things as well as possible. Yeah. So if you can't make it to Chicago on September 1st through the 5th, then we will do our best to still record if you want to see what was said.
I'm going to try and find a location for us to do this so that everyone will feel like it's okay to just kind of do a walk-in and you don't feel like you're invading somebody's hotel room or
James's underwear sitting on the counter.
Or their personal orgy going on. Yeah. So.
But we'll do that. Now I'm going to try, and by the way, just if you're listening, I'm going to try and get a head count just so we know who is officially planning on coming, just to prep a little more and be sure. So if you see that on Facebook, or if you are someone who is not anywhere out on the internet and you plan to come, maybe send us an email, rereadingwolf@gmail.com, just so if you plan to come, and you hear this beforehand, just so we know that you're ready.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, okay, let's get started on these comments here. Yeah. Let's see. On Reddit, Goonhands reminds us that he's already written an extensive write-up on the identity of Catherine, Karina, and Contessa. Put a link to that in the show notes. Basically, Karina in the play is Catherine, Severian's mother, and the daughter of Valeria and Dux. How do you pronounce his? Cassidius?
Cassidius, I think.
Yeah. Dux Cassidius. And then the maid in the ceremony is Karina's Kybit, and she's also the woman from the Path of Air, which suggests that Wolfe is misdirecting us here in the play. And so Goonhands seems to be presuming that Severian's mother is the daughter of an armiger. I don't know. There are a lot of things about this theory that bother me personally, but one thing about it that I think is cool is that he says that just as Severian seems to have the power of the new sun to resurrect Triscally, he also has the unwitting power to time travel. And he does in the first chapter of the book to encounter Baudelaire, Hildegard, and Thea digging up Theclus's body. And that actually is a machinery that I think could theoretically work.
Mm-hmm. And we talk about the places where it does seem that he absolutely does seem to time travel just by walking.
Right.
That could be going on in the catacombs, could be on that path of crushed white stones or bones that he follows in the graveyard in the first chapter. Happens in a few different places where it's possible. So, yeah. As far as the other relationships, I'm not entirely settled on still all the relationships, but I do think that the time travel part makes sense to me.
Yeah, definitely. And also on Reddit, Mike Farrar suggests that maybe it was the Harad jewels who, along with helping Baldanders with his technology, that they, quote, greatly shaped Talos's personality, aided in his construction, and provided him with the lost Book of the New Sun. Additionally, he says that, quote, given the play is adapted by Talos and Knog's book was based on Severian's retelling, of Talos' play, I think looking for Agia, Hathor, or even Jonas in it will be a fruitless search. Severian had met all those people, maybe. He adds, quote, Earth of the New Sun adds Valeria, Jader as prophet, Juturna, and some soldiers to the mix of characters. You guys made note of Jahi being naked and spangled with jewels earlier, and I'll note that it's Valeria crowned and spangled with jewels later in Earth of the New Sun, and that Baldy rises up from his role as fawning servant brute in the play to steal the prophet's best lines in the coming White Fountain and its destructive nature at the deluge. Yeah. Well, I'm tilting at windmills here, but I think you and Mark are looking for the answer to this play primarily in the chronological future of Earth. And I think that's an error, but I'll develop that more as we go.
Well, you do have a bit of a semi-ally there. So, because if Farrar is thinking it's more about the back, then that's different. But I'm still convinced it's more about the future.
What's coming up? Yeah. Let's see. Also on Reddit, Turambar29 is following us, at least to chapter 18 of Claw so far, and he's enjoying the speculation on Jonas's past. And I've developed a very specific understanding of his past and future with a kind of an empty space in the middle. I suppose that's no surprise. I mentioned it in pieces, but I'll string it all together in our summary of Claw when we talk about Jonas. But Turambar says, okay, I see some thematic resonance in Jonas with other characters in Wolfe novels. What it reminds me of most, though, is Manny and the elf from The Wizard Knight. I see a thematic resonance in Wolfe of seeing lesser creatures like Jonas and Sidero, who are considered machines by Severian, elevated by human beings with something spiritual. Hyros seem to assert that this is how they were made, and now they wish to elevate humans in turn. So we know Jonas is seeking the Heraduals. It occurs to me now, Craig, that Jonas could have just stuck around with Severian a few hours longer, and then he would have met the Heraduals at the play. But, those Heraduals would not have been returning to the big ship. They were headed to the past. So I guess that's, not a great benefit. Turambar was inspired by our conversation about Jonas actually being neither robot nor bio, but a third, as a merger of the two, which is why he becomes unhinged when his temporary union is disrupted. He wants from the mirrors, Turambar says, and from the Hyros, he wants the Hyros to perform a kind of permanent merger of his separate parts. Yeah. I think it all fits thematically. I like it.
I'm thinking, it certainly fits thematically. I'm trying to think. Yeah, it's still just hard for me to really get a strong sense of the Hyros' sort of mechanical purpose, like just in the plot. I mean, I know Baldnader said they fed him information and things like that before, but for others, I'm not really sure how they would do things like that. Like, I'm still, to be quite honest, apart from the section in Earth of the New Sun where they basically save Severian from the tomb,
right? I
don't know what else they do precisely for him. I mean, they talk to him a lot, but I don't know. Maybe that's a question for later when we see more about them later, but
right. Yeah. That's kind of interesting though. Yeah. They always say, the first time you see us, it's going to be the last time we'll see you. And the last time you see us, the first time for us, but actually it's the last time for both of them, right? Because they're moving backwards in the past, and Severian has moved way far in the past. Yeah. Kind of a little surprise and a twist for that. Yeah. By the way, thanks everybody for taking part in the Ask Me Anything. Nothing could be more frightening for us than to have an Ask Me Anything and nobody attends.
No, especially, and it's nice that now you look at that and it has, like, I think if I look at it right now, 180 something replies. Yeah. Even if they're all us replying, at least it just doesn't look dead. That's nice.
Right. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, really, thanks. Did you have a favorite question from?
Yeah, I think I do. It was the one that was, what would I think and would I read it if Wolfe had left a book that just explained everything?
Yeah. I definitely read that.
Yeah. I mean, of course. I would like that. But it was definitely a kind of cool thought experiment. But it was by Agnes Varda.
Mm-hmm.
They just asked if Wolfe had left a book clarifying every illusion, symbol, and secret in his writing, blowing the lid off the whole thing, would that be a good thing? And would you read it? And my reaction was kind of two things. On the one hand, I feel like, of course, I would read it. But also, part of the reason I wouldn't mind reading it is I don't read Wolfe as just interesting when the puzzles are still mysteries. Like, I don't really think of him, even the parts that are puzzle-like, I don't think of him as just puzzles, because I still am really attracted just on the surface level of how much Wolfe intends to stick with a single person's point of view. Mm-hmm. And the point of the stories is, to me, even when you know the whole backstory, like a Book of the New Sun, there's still a whole lot of drama in Severian's learning about these things and how he reacts to not knowing and how he reacts to the possibilities that he starts to put together. Same kind of thing with Abel. Like, Abel doesn't know everything that's going on in Wizard Night. And even if we start to feel like we answer questions, there's still a really cool drama of Abel's reaction, Abel's relation to not knowing and what goes on. And it's that sort of way that the characters deal with being in uncertainty. That's the real sort of like cool thing about Wolfe to me. Like, there's so many people who could write mysterious stories that once you solve the puzzle, then they're no fun to read anymore. But like, Book of the New Sun is still fascinating to me, even though I think I have a reasonably good sense of at least a couple of the possibilities of what the whole backstory is. I'm still fascinated by, how do these characters deal with that? How does it relate to them in the middle of being in the story? Like, one thing that was so cool about Wolfe was he was able to write these stories that last, to me, and are still really moving, dramatic, and interesting, even when you do, quote unquote, solve them, that they're not just fun as surreal, weird fiction, which I think they are. But they last even when you've sort of seen things from the other side. So that was my main answer to that. And first of all, dude, yeah, of course I would totally read that and check myself and see like how right I was.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first time I read any Wolfe story is my least favorite. In fact, sometimes it's just very hard. All I'm trying to do is get through it so I can read it for real and understand what's going on. And so, it's kind of a mind thing. You have to pay attention and you try to understand what's going on. And sometimes it takes more than one person to figure out what's going on. But the real joy for me is when I feel like I understand what's going on, because it never disappoints. I always can see all the little structure going on inside the play, inside the story and the narrative, and the little hints that Wolfe has put in ahead, early on. And that's very satisfying in any story, if you can see that going on. And some of my favorite Wolfe stories are ones where there is really very little doubt about what is going on at the plot level at all. Yeah.
And it's still part of that thing that I think, and the other thing I would really like too is if we did see the solutions and sort of how he thought, or what Wolfe thought a quote unquote solution to one of his stories or novels would be, we'd learn a whole lot more about what he thought counted as an interesting mystery and what he thought counted as a meaningful puzzle rather than just something that he made hard to figure out. Like, that tells you a lot, because I mean, people still argue over what are the puzzles, right? You and I have differences over, well, what's actually a mystery here, or what's actually something to be figured out. That's as much of a debate, I think, as anything else. And so if we could learn more about what Wolfe thought, I still come from the way of reading stuff that I feel like once the book is out there, it does belong as much to the readers as to the author. The effects that books have are often not exactly what the authors hoped they would, but they're still meaningful and loved for that effect, even if it's totally different from the author. Having both is awesome, because then you can see both what he intended, but then maybe how something else was going on at the same time that maybe he didn't consciously intend or as a craftsman intend, but it came out because that's his style or that's his personality or something like that. And you could just clarify all those different things even more if we had a book like that. So yeah, totally. I would read it.
Yeah, I could pick one of these questions, but and there's a lot I really like, but I'm going to pick something that I can handle really short because I know this is going to be a long episode. Gfoil 333 says, I believe James is based in Austin, Texas, and I'm in San Antonio. Any chance for a Texas-based WolfCon? I would say, Greg, there's a very good chance for that. Yeah. And also, I'm kind of split between Austin and North Dallas right now, but I have a yard in both those locations. And so, yeah, we should definitely have like a little wolf get together sometime when, go to my backyard, hang out and eat some barbecue.
That'd be cool. No, in fact, our first thoughts about doing a little WolfCon were going to be in Texas. But then when we saw that WorldCon was in Chicago, it seemed like, well, that's a good draw for people.
Give people a reason. Yeah.
But if we have a second shadow, a sequel to the Shadow of the Con, the Con of the Conciliator or something, then that I think we'd probably look for Texas. Yeah. Is that what we have to call it now? Con of the Conciliator? I don't know. The Conciliation
the
Con.
Next one.
Con of the Conciliation.
Yeah, that's right. And then Con of the Lictor. Yep. And
so there were a ton of other great questions on the AMA, but we already have a really long episode here coming up. So we'll pull up a few of them for the next episode, especially if there's not that many comments. So we can pad some space with that. But thank you again to everybody who did that and participated and threw out ideas. And if you didn't know that was going on, go take a look because there's a lot of good stuff that came out about overall
it's really good
ideas. Wolf, but also some specific stuff, and James even got to go fifth ed Cerberus stuff.
Yeah, I always like that. So
you keep the crooks and charlatans in business bay. They do appreciate your patronage.
And we have 2 new master patrons this week, so we'd like to give them a special shout out right now. First, welcome to Mo Cheesemo and David McKay.
Okay.
As always, thanks to not just the new ones, but to all of our patrons for helping out and supporting us. And as we get closer and closer to the Shadow of the Con in September, we have to say thank you even more to all of our patrons, because without them, we couldn't be doing this. And again, if you are interested in Shadow of the Con, check out shycon.org or look us up on any social media where you can find information about what we're doing. But that's coming up very soon, September 1st through 5th. And we're going to have the exact program for our material out here shortly. And hopefully, maybe some things will be live streamed. At the very least, we'll have some recordings. But for now, let's keep making headway in the play.
So we're up to part 4, and we are, we're not halfway yet. So I think we'll speed up. I do feel like once we get to certain points, we're going to speed up.
We're going to do, because we're not coming back. I'm telling you, we will never go back. I will never speak of this afterwards. And we are, so let's dig hard.
All right. Well, here we go. Let's have our stage direction. It says, the stage darkens. When the light returns, Meshyan and Jahi are lying together beneath a rowan tree. There is a door in the hillside behind them. Jahi's lip is split and puffed, giving her a pouting look. Blood trickles from it to her chin.
So these two fighting here, they've it's kind of off screen a little bit, but they've been in a fight. And, when I read this, I'm like, okay, are there actually 2 women fighting in the story or not? Could it be a metaphorical struggle between feminine principles like Juturna and Ephetha, Aegea and Dorcas and Jolenta? And I mean, for this, where it is, Dorcas and Jolenta are clearly the ones who are kind of vying for something where this isn't the arc. But I think it might be something bigger than that.
Yeah.
And it's the door in the hillside that stands out to me more as like, what exactly are we talking about here? And the first thing that makes me think is the Cumean's cave, just because it is something there, which also then, and this is just the pure sort of speculation part, but then I wonder about the witches, and is there something about the witches and the cruelty of the female torturers that gets talked about later on? But I don't know. So this is,
I'm going to refer you later on to one kind of door the hill. It actually occurs on the site where they do this. When Severian first comes back to Earth in Earth of the New Sun, he sees his own memorial there, and it's kind of right on this location. And so I think we'll come back to that, though.
Yeah, there's. It's interesting that you guys are all going for literal explanations for what's going on, because when
I've always,
when I see this, I see that we have a rowan tree, which is a fairy tree, and there's a door in the hillside, which is fairy reference.
Yeah. But do you know what one of the big things that the rowan tree did? It saved Thor when he was being swept away in a river, like a flood in the underworld, and so he managed to grab onto it. So like it's associated with a flood and salvation too.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. People used to make little crosses out of rowan trees and hang them from the necks of their cattle to keep away the witches. Supposedly, Welsh tradition was that the rowan tree was the tree used to carve Jesus' cross, actually. And it was called by a word meaning the lamenting fruit. And let's see, there's a vague connection between this tree and the tree of life, the Greek goddess Hebe, Roman Juventus. Both their names mean youth, and Juventus's name is associated with the word rejuvenate and juvenile. And actually, Hebe's name means youth as well. And she was the cupbearer of the gods, and she was the youngest of the Olympians, and she was responsible for serving ambrosia to the other gods and restoring their youth. She's the goddess of eternal youth, the only god with that power. And she was associated with eagles. Her father, Zeus, was often in the form of an eagle. And eagles, like the phoenix, were believed to have the ability to restore their own youth. Anyway, there's a story where Hebe lost her cup and an eagle went through a lot of deadly trouble to get it back. And everywhere the eagle's blood dropped grew a rowan tree. So the rowan is associated with eternal life.
Very cool. Now, that's really neat, but I'm going to bring an aside here from a different novel, Wolfe's last novel, Interlibrary Loan. We learned that Ern's name actually means eagle in that. And there's a lot of imagery about like the cup or the liquid that brings eternal life in that. And so it's really an interesting metaphorical association there.
Oh, that's pretty good, because that works as a resurrected person, right?
Yes. And he's trying to get like that youth back, because the older version of himself does things to itself. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of stuff going on in that.
Right. So in the last episode, Act 1 ended. And during Act 1, Messian and Jahi ran off in a big fight. And Jahi was attacking Messian, and Messian was fleeing. And now we have here, starting in Act 2, Messian and Jahi seem to have patched up their differences after some kind of physical struggle, which supposedly Messian won, because we have Jahi with her blood trickling from her mouth with a fat lip. And but as far as we're told, this never happened in Severian's story. But the idea of the blood trickling from Jahi's mouth, it kind of initially would suggest vampiric Lilith character, as you mentioned Lilith before, Mark. And Lilith does have, as we mentioned in the chapter 34, does have certain vampiric associations, and certainly belongs in any creation story. But in this case, the blood from her mouth is her own, because Messian hit her.
Now, real quickly, there is a scene in Book of the New Sun where there's like almost a vampiric dribbling of something. I think it's from Severian's lip in that chapter called The Morning in Shadow of the Torturer, where they wake up and then the pomegranate or whatever is there, and Dorcas comments on it.
That's the Garden of Eden.
Yes,
the Garden of Eden
yes,
imagery.
exactly. You write that tempting fruit there, but what is the tempting fruit here? I mean, we know the rowan tree is protective. We know that it protects against witchcraft and enchantment, but like, is what's being invoked in this really? And I do think there's a weird gender swapping in so many of these scenes when you see them reflected. Like, the prophet is a prophetess, and then here the female had the dripping lip, but Severian was the one with it earlier. So I think it's just an interesting thing that's going on with that in this play.
Yeah, because he looked like a vampire bat with his fangs.
And even the Autarch at the In Earth is going to be the Autarcha. It's going to be Valeria, more or less. So it's really interesting how Wolfe decided to invert some things across that gender line and representation. So we can read the dialogue with Meshian.
Who's Meshian here?
I'll be Jahi.
I was Meshia.
Okay. Meshian says, how strong I would be to still search for him if only I knew you would not follow me.
And Jahi responds, I move with the strength of the world below and will follow you to the second ending of earth if need be. But if you strike me again, you will suffer for it.
Meshian lifts her fist and Jahi cowers back.
So we're not told who she's searching for. Presumably it's Meshia, Severian, but it's not stated. In this scene, it does feel like Dorcas's and Agia's relationship. In fact, it's difficult not to imagine Jahi as being played by Agia for me, but I still want to point out some differences in it. This is not a scene that's anywhere in Severian's story that I know of where Dorcas is pursued by Agia rather than pursuing Severian. In fact, Jahi doesn't seem to have any interest in Meshia, the first man, the Zoroastrian Adam. She's interested in pursuing Dorcas.
Well, I want to know, just on the basic sort of plot level, who is Meshiana talking about here when she says him? She didn't need to search for Meshia.
Not Meshia? Well, that's a good point.
I mean, that's what I was wondering, because they sort of ran each other off, and unless this is just
to get back to him,
lost.
They were fighting over him.
Okay,
they're fighting over him to see who's going to get him, right. And so actually, that's what
made sense, but it's weird.
Yeah, and then later on, after the play, the girls are going to run off, and Severian's going to run after them, searching after them, kind of and so there's this once again this weird gender inversion in the events that actually occur.
Right.
And Jahi says that she's following her. It's just being really picky here, because she doesn't say when she responds, I move with the strength of the world below and will follow you. Instead of
very much so, if need
almost
be.
Instead of they're fighting over Meshia, she's fighting over Meshia, which is not just, I'm just talking about surface level of the story. That wasn't what happened before they went all messy.
Okay, but is it could this be a Moby Dick kind of thing where I'll follow you to the ends of the earth for my vengeance?
Yeah, it could be that.
But it isn't quite that.
Well, they're not. She's not trying to wreak vengeance at this point. She's already won that fight.
No, because she says, if you strike me again, you'll suffer. So, Okay, I'm going to follow you. Now, in my reading here, then, I think this becomes something okay, Jahi is an archetype. Jahi is going to be Juturna, right? And so we're going to see her wanting to mesh with something that's the new humanity here. And so I think that this is following in that footstep. And this is the stuff that I've been saying all along here. But to make it really work with the plot, I move with the strength of the world below and will follow you to the second ending of earth. You're not getting rid of her, right? If need be. So there's no getting rid of what she's going to pursue what she wants, and she won't make them suffer unless they strike at her again, I guess. It's kind of.
Well, I do find that a little bit credible. If Jahi herself is the queen of the underworld, so as her archetype, that world below applies to that. But I kind of like the idea if she were to be associated with Juturna and referring to the powers of the under the sea, the world below. Yep. I assume you guys are still sticking with the idea that the second ending of Earth is the coming of the new sun, and the first ending was when the sun got stricken.
No, I think that the first ending of Earth is when Ushas is born. And I think this will be, I'll follow you even beyond Ushas to the real end of Ushas, another ending. So I think it's you're not going to get rid of me in this new creation. I'm still going to be there until the very, very bitter end, way in the future. I'll follow you into eternity. So I think that's a projection forward from the ending that we have one ending right now. And that's I'm going to follow you even beyond this one to the next one. That's my reading.
Another possibility for the strength of the world below could be the tunnels underneath the citadel, which suggests some sort of time travel reference. Just saying. Not that I know what that means.
I'll let you say that. Okay.
Now Meshian and Jahi will sit together and have a discourse, and that feels like it's in the same dramatic genre as Waiting for the Godot. I can't derive any illumination from their conversation, but I do think there's something there possibly that's worth discussing. So Messiaen says, your legs were shaking worse than mine when we decided to rest here.
And Jahi responds, I suffer far more than you, but the strength of the world below is to endure past endurance. Even as I am more beautiful than you, I'm a more tender creature by far.
And Messiaen says, we've seen that, I think.
I warn you again, and there will be no third warning. Strike me at your peril.
What will you do? Summon up Irenas to destroy me? I have no fear of that. If you could, you would have done it long before.
Worse, if you strike me again, you'll come to enjoy it.
So this quote from Messiaen is intriguing in that Severian will think of it later. What will you do? Summon the Irenas to destroy me? The Irenas are personifications of vengeance against some grievous sin, particularly sins against those who are due some right or respect. Sins of children against their parents, sins of the young against the elderly, sins of hosts against their guests, sins of cities against aliens. They are multiple, although of undetermined number. But here in Talos' play, there is only one. And according to Hesiod in his Theogony, the Irenas were born from the blood that fell on the earth when Kronos castrated Uranus, his father. So the Irenas were born from a kind of patricide. However, there are others that identify their origin far more primordially in that they are the children of Nyx, of Night herself, who is a character in the Tale of the Student and His Son, who I identify as a personification of death. And if you were paying close attention, you would know that. In other places, they are the children of Nyx by Hades or Pluto. In other words, they are chthonic beings. In fact, citing the Tale of the Student and His Son again, they dwell in Erebus, the darkness of the underworld, who, as we pointed out before, is the consort of Nyx and the stepfather of little Princess Noctua, the love and confederate of the sun, flesh from dreams. And bringing this back to Jahi, the queen of the underworld, it would make sense if she might be able to summon Irenas to destroy Messiaen, but notice Messiaen doesn't seem too worried that she will. But to invoke Irenas suggests some dark sin by Messiaen, or Dorcas, or whoever the character is a figure of.
Okay, so let's look at the castration very quickly, because there is some castration imagery throughout New Sun, and primarily it's when the Autarch attempts, to actually bring the New Sun, he's going to be unmanned, more or less. So what is at stake? What does the Autarch want? He wants a continuation of humanity, but here at the end, if you strike me, you'll come to enjoy it. If we become as evil as our foes and kind of do the things that they want us to do sometimes, right? That can lead to corruption, the corruption of humanity. And if you destroy your foes, sometimes you become worse than your foes. And so I think that that's kind of the moral thrust there, is like, she's not going to destroy necessarily Messiaen, but the actions that Messiaen, as kind of a archetype of what humanity might be, that she takes can influence its development and possibly corrupt it in a way.
It's also very redolent of the reason Severian gives for wanting to get rid of the guild at the end, that it's
Yes.
like it's horrible that good men should have to do this. Like, in the way he tells it, that's the deeper sin than causing pain, causing suffering, is that it actually corrupts good people.
Yes.
I don't know if this is just too, I don't really have an answer, so maybe we ought to just save it for Citadel the Autarch, but Severian's going to recall this line about Irenas when he's camping with the body of Miles, the dead soldier. And he's thinking about his memories. That sort of reminds me of, when he left the Man-Apes caves and was associating, the clanging thing, the walking tower in the cavern, and also associating it, having something to do with memory. But in this, it just feels like such a free association, and he fears he might lose himself in his memories forever. He thinks of Iada when he ducked into the necropolis the night that Severian met Vodalus. He thinks of a lightning storm he once watched at the Citadel. He thinks then of Dorcas, her own memories of her life before she died, and mixes them with the line, sitting here in a window, trays and a rude, what will you do? Summon up Irenas to destroy me? So, I mean, I don't I have a lot written here. I don't know really where to go with it. Maybe we should just save it.
It's kind of interesting then that Dorcas is the one who's given this line more or less, right? Associated with the memories of her life. Has Dorcas done anything sinful or vile or something that requires vengeance besides just, bringing Severian to the world eventually, right? Like through her lineage.
It seems hard to imagine that she'd ever done anything wrong, even though she does refer to herself as being something wretched. So next, Jahi threatens Meshiana with a curse if Meshiana strikes her again. And the curse, she says, is that she will learn to enjoy it. This line, spoken by Jolenta, recalls the previous chapter, where Severian says that Jolenta came near to making a sadist of him, someone who gets sexual pleasure from causing pain to others. It's similar, but once again, it holds nothing firm for me beyond that.
I think it's just thematic, the corruption from temptation that Jahi symbolizes overall.
Right.
All right. We have now 2 new characters. Enter first soldier and second soldier armed with pikes.
So these are naturally the Piquinaries, the pikemen that the Autarchs said that he was going to send to look for Meshiana and Jahi. So in this scene, we get 2 brand new characters, first soldier and second soldier, played by, I guess, Severian and Talos. But we're not given any obvious clues which is which at first. I think the second soldier is being played by Severian. It just feels right. And they are called soldiers, though not Piquinaries. Otherwise, I think only Miles is ever simply called a soldier in this book. I'd like to make something of these characters, but frankly, no. I've never made much of it, but I always felt a thematic pairing between Severian and Agilus. And remember that when Agilus was being brought to the scaffolding, Severian had a kind of vision of him as a soldier, and Severian feels some regret at executing a guy who he has, until then, only had contempt for as his would-be murderer.
One of his key formative moments is that talk about the coin, and he uses that example of how a soldier becomes a soldier, and so I think that every time a soldier appears, there's something about that duty, something that leads to where the acceptance of what you say you're going to do basically forms you, right? Like the symbol of the coin forms him in some way. So I think that, it's not beyond the pale to look at some of that as well here.
Also, these Piquinaries coming up to arrest Meshiana and Jahi is kind of similar to Severian and Jonas being arrested on House Absolute grounds. Obviously, the Autarch would have wanted them brought to him, but he didn't want them treated rough or arrested.
And who does Severian get to die in his stead? Like lures him over and the Nachus kill that guy. What was he a soldier? What was he called?
The Ulan.
He's an Ulan. Yeah. That's right. He's an Ulan. Yeah. Okay.
All right, so the first soldier, I guess I'll be first soldier. First soldier, look here. And then later we're going to discover that the name of this first soldier is Ivo. Saint Ivo was a 13th century priest. He's the patron saint of Brittany, abandoned children, and lawyers. So the patron saint of bastards and lawyers, which is by some accounts redundant.
So why might bastards be important here?
Well, well, it depends on what the soldier is. I mean, it's being played. I think Ivo is being played by Talos.
Well, beyond the soldier aspect, I mean, like this idea of bastardization, right? Like you have a child that is not necessarily acknowledged by its parent. It's something like out there, and I think that is something at stake too. What's the rightful lineage of humanity, right? What's the bastard child of humanity? And in Short Sun, I mean, I think we'll come to a more more Lockean view of some of the species there, where I will anyway.
So the second soldier then says to Meshiana and Jahi, and I need to just pick a way to pronounce Jahi instead of doing it differently.
Well, it could be Jahi.
I like Jahi. I'll just stick with that. So then the second soldier says, down, down, don't stand, or like a heron, I'll skewer you. You're coming with us.
Herons skewer fish, right?
And Meshian.
And Meshian says, on our hands and knees?
And the first soldier replies, "None of your insolence."
A second soldier has told them to follow them, but he's told them not to stand. And this, of course, is a funny scene. Remember, they haven't done anything wrong and they aren't being arrested, but the soldiers are treating them like potentially dangerous criminals. And these guys are, somewhat comic relief characters.
Yeah, we are starting to get more into the sort of farce side of things. Like we had the Autarch there and the sort of play, but these guys add a different kind of slapstick, I guess.
Yeah.
What's going on? Yeah. So the first soldier prods Messiaen with his pike, and as he does, there's a groaning almost too deep for hearing. The stage vibrates in sympathy with it, and the ground shakes.
Oh, wow.
So the second soldier says, "What was that?"
And first, I don't know.
And Jahi says, "The end of Earth, you fool. Go ahead and spear her. It's the end of you anyway."
This is really interesting because Jahi has been talking about how she moves with the power under the world. Mm-hmm. But it's when they are prodding Messiaen that the earth starts groaning. Does the groaning earth and the first soldier prodding Messiaen with his spear and Jahi suggesting that he run her through, does this mean that we're supposed to associate Messiaen with Earth itself?
Well, what is going to make the Earth groan there? It's the coming of the new sun. So I would say, right, that the coming of the new sun and the new races that are rising up from that, she is the future, right? So it's interesting that a threat to her threatens the Earth, but I think in a way it makes sense because if you kill the mother of everyone that's going to come after, right, then you're threatening the destruction of the world as well. So I think it makes a kind of thematic sense, but logically it doesn't because she's more associated with Ushas than Earth. But it's more like, okay, you end her, you end everything for real. And the new sun is coming.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw out some references because I don't know where this is going. So maybe something else stick. When Gaia, the Earth, Cronus' mother, complained to him that Uranus was keeping her youngest children from being born, the 100-handed Hectoncheires, never had to say that out loud. He's forcing them to be kept beneath the Earth in Tartarus, and Gaia is described as groaning in pain. And then alternately in Romans 8:19-23, the Apostle Paul says, "The creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. The creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning in the pains of childbirth right up into the present time. And not only that, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, also groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption to sonship, the redemption of our bodies." But if you're waiting for me to tie all this together, I forget about it. I can't. Not in the way I like to tie things together.
But I do like that the imagery of Jahi and Messiaen here gets crossed, right? Because it's Jahi who said, I'm the power of the world below. Mm-hmm. But then when it actually comes about that Messiaen is getting threatened, then you actually hear it. So it's not just a threat anymore. But now I don't particularly know what to make of that kind of ambiguity, because it seems like even Jahi mentions that, that's the groaning of Earth, you fool. And if that's tied into the idea that Messiaen is now giving birth to the new race and the new sun is coming, then maybe this is pushing the logic too much, but it's almost like the logic is messed up where, Jahi's like, no, we're still fighting over it. But Messiaen is saying it's already happening and the Earth is giving birth now. I don't know. But I also feel like kind of worrying about the logic of that sort of order and priority may not quite be right there.
Unless in some way Jahi and Messiaen are not representative of distinct people here, but of the same, of two sides of the same coin, mm-hmm. Once again, can't identify the coin, can't identify the sides, but it makes sense in a kind of a weird way if that were true.
So when Jahi here says that this is going to be the end of you anyway, we get kind of a comedic response from the second soldier, right? He says, little you know, it's the beginning for us. When the order came to search the garden, special mention was made of you two and orders given to bring you back. 10 chrysos you'll be worth, or I'm a cobbler. So basically, he's not worried about the end of the earth becoming the new sun. He's like, I'm going to get 10 coins for bringing you back. This is just the start of everything great in my life.
Yeah,
right?
let's get my money.
Yeah.
And that's a very Shakespearean kind of thing.
Yeah.
Somebody says something deep and the comedic fool just takes it in a really simple way. Yeah. So then it says he seizes Jahi, and as soon as he does so, Messiaen darts off into the darkness, and the first soldier runs after her.
This is a scene that's reminiscent a little of the scene where Iata rushed into the necropolis with Severian, Drott, and Roche waiting outside. I guess Jahi bites him, although the stage directions don't say so.
And in the very next chapter, Severian's going to run after Dorcas to try and catch her. So it kind of it repeats a little bit.
So the second soldier yells, yeah, bite me, will you? And then the second soldier strikes Jahi with the shaft of his weapon, and they struggle.
And Jahi says, fool, she's escaping.
That is, Messiana is getting away.
Yeah.
And the second soldier says, that's Evo's worry. I've got my prisoner, and he let his escape if he doesn't catch her. Come on, we're going to see the Kiliarch.
Jahi attempts to seduce him in a manner that's reminiscent of maybe Agia, or perhaps Jolenta herself, or Juturna.
Will you not love me before we leave this winsome spot?
And have my manhood cut off and shoved into my mouth? Not I.
They'd have to find it first.
Yeah, Jahi's wit is as sharp as her teeth.
But there's castration coming back too.
Yeah.
Yep.
So second soldier then says, what's that? And he shakes her.
You take the office of Earth, who will not trouble herself for me.
She's referring to the shaking of Earth. The soldier is shaking her, but Earth isn't shaking. It was groaning when they prodded Messiana, but it's not going to react the same way for Jahi. Am I reading this right?
I think so. And also that Earth doesn't care about their particular fate, right? Jahi, the second soldier, not quite as important to Earth. And Jahi says here, but wait, release me only for a moment, and I'll show you wonderful things.
Well, if you think that she's still trying to buy him off with sex, but we're going to see that that's not it at all.
And the second soldier says, I can see them now, for which I give all thanks to the moon.
Jahi says that she's going to show him wonderful things, but the soldier says he can already see her bare tatas and finds them wonderful. And Talos' play is essentially a burlesque.
And Jahi says, I can make you rich. 10 chrysos will be as nothing to you, but I have no power while you grasp my body.
So Jahi claims that she has some kind of magical power to make him rich, but she can't do it while he holds on to her. So the second soldier tries to determine whether she'll be able to escape if he lets her go.
And he says, your legs are longer than the other women's, but I've seen that you don't move so readily on them. Indeed, I think that you can scarcely stand.
No more can I.
So there we've got legs that don't work, which is very fifth head. Right. I mean,
it's Juturna though. She can't walk on men.
No, I know. That's
well, it's also Jolenta, right? She can't walk either, and that's obviously a reference to the actress herself.
But
it's bigger than that though. It's bigger.
It is an interesting trend that Wolfe always has these sort of fake characters not have solid legs. Like that seems like really cool dream logic to me. Something
Severian
about
himself is Severian the Lion, right?
Yeah. So. But second soldier then says, I'll hold your necklace. The chain looks stout enough. If that's sufficient, show me what you can do. If it's not, come with me. You'll be no freer while I have you.
So the second soldier is just going to hold her by her jewelry. Her jewelry has become her chains. And if jewelry suggests a glamour, either Jolenta's glamour or the glamour of some character she parallels, then this is a little moral. But of course, I want more than that. But now Jahi performs the magic trick that she promised, right?
Yep. So Jahi raises both hands with the little fingers, index fingers, and thumbs extended. For a moment, there is silence, then a strange, soft music filled with trillings. Snow falls in gentle flakes.
She makes it snow. And the second soldier is underwhelmed.
Yeah, stop that. just weird. And second soldier seizes one arm and jerks it down. The music stops abruptly. A few last snowflakes settle on his head. He says, that wasn't gold.
Yet you saw.
There's an old woman in my home village who can work the weather too. She's not as quick as you, I admit, but then she's a lot older and feeble.
Whoever she may be, She's not 1,000th part as old as I.
So Jahi here claims that to be very old, which I'm sorry if I'm going to troll about for an Earth candidate. There will be a conversation that Severian will have with Syriaca in the volume where she'll alert Severian that she's older than he might expect, old enough to be his mother. And the Kumean can, very much appear to be an old woman when she is very much more. And she's the head of the witches or a commander of the witches. Couldn't it be possible that a being like that could also appear to be a younger woman? Either Marin, who's also a witch, or Agia, who is by illusion associated with the Kumean Sibyl in the Aeonid. Remember the admonishment Severian receives from the Hyros that someone who wears one mask might wear another. But that's all I got.
So I would, repeat that she's Juturna again, but there's magic here. So you know what? Why not the Kumean? Sure. Yeah, she's old. She has that magical ability. She's associated with witchcraft. I don't think that, Jahi needs to be limited to only Juturna, even though in the most literal sense, her goals, the ones that she espouses here, are the ones that Juturna has been following in the main plot.
Yeah.
We continue. Ender Baldanders is the statue, moving slowly and as though blind.
Jahi's surprised. She's like, what is that thing?
Second soldier, one of Father Anire's little pets. It can't hear you or make a sound. I'm not even sure it's alive.
Why, neither am I, for all of that.
So much there. Here is possibly a reveal, however, that the statues in the House Absolute garden can't hear anything, right? But this one has taken a liking to Jahi.
And also what Jahi responds is kind of ambiguous, where she's like, she's saying, I'm not sure it's alive either, or she's saying, I'm not alive either. Like that really ambiguous kind of Wolfian statement at the end there.
Yeah. It's very, very true. It's not clear. Maybe she's saying neither am I alive.
Yeah.
But I think that's got to have been deliberate.
For sure.
So as the statue passes nearer, she strokes its cheek with her free hand.
Lover, 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 have you no greeting for me?
The statue just...
Just imagine Baldanders working out that line. So, well, even though Jahi ostensibly has no power while the soldier holds her, the statue is not limited and it has a will of its own, right?
Second soldier says, what's this? Stop. Woman, you said you had no power while I held you.
Behold my slave. Can you fight him? Go ahead. Break your spear on that broad chest.
And the statue kneels and kisses Jahi's foot. And he says, no, but I can outrun him. The second soldier throws Jahi across his shoulder and runs. The door in the hill opens, he enters, and it slams shut behind him.
The soldier appears to be escaping into House Absolute. And by the way, beings that leave this world by escaping into doors and hills, that, like I said, that could be a fairy reference.
You do also have Jonas escaping through a door of sorts or a window.
Very true. Very true.
This scene here, the statue's hammering, he hammers at it with his fists there, and tears are going down his face, and he starts even digging with it. And so we've already talked about how these statues are an imitation of the Hyros here, like when he talks about what they imitate, like those extra Solarian beings that they're kind of an imitation of. And so what's left behind? Well, humanity in the future, and this soldier is just absconded with it. So it's their mourning. And then, Gabriel from off stage, you hear his voice in this, and it says, thus stone images keep faith with a departed day, alone in the desert when man has fled away. And I think there's so many important images in that line there, right? A day that's departed. So the sun, right, dying there. Man has fled. It's almost like instead of the new sun coming, the day is over. Mankind's day is done and it's run away, and the statue can't catch up with it. What does the statue want? Well, it wants to come into reality. I think. But Jahi's interaction with the statue is interesting because it's almost like she cajoles it into following her, but then she's taken away. So I think that this interaction here is important, and we're going to get the statue actually appear when Severian comes back to Earth, and his own memorial will be set up on this very site where they're acting out the play, and the statue will approach him. So this scene is going to happen, but how did Jahi have anything to do with that statue that just kind of walks up to Severian and says, hey, this is Severian's memorial here, first man of Earth. So.
Well, I have a couple ideas here. Is Baldander such a good actor that he can cry in command? Or has Talos mocked up some special FX device to allow him to do that? Pumping water through his eyes and coming. So the other thing, Craig, we were kind of speculating on the nature of these statues. And I wonder, thus the stone images keep faith with a departed day alone in the desert when a man is fled away. Perhaps, we were thinking that maybe these statues were the hierogrammates, Zadkiel's people. And I wonder if they are the people that Malrubius talks about that made the hierogrammates.
There's a way to look at that I kind of like, which is cool, which is that it's both literal and symbolic at the same time. Think of it this way, in the sense that there are all these cycles. There's always the seed. There's always the possibility of humanity becoming something bigger. And it's not so much about, okay, which universe's humanity will actually become the Hyros. It's more that it's that potential that's there. In that sense, sure, the statue is always kind of that thing because it's always a representation of what it's going to become, what humanity could become. It's like a memory, the memory from the future. That's kind of how, when Severian first describes him, that's kind of how he talks about it. Like there's this perfect race that we can't really describe perfectly, but this is the closest we can come. It's kind of like a memory from the future, like potential. So
yeah. But I guess, I guess what I'm thinking of something, perhaps it's more literal. Perhaps these aren't, say, Zadkiel's people watching Severian from Yesod. Perhaps these are a people that we've barely even been referenced in this book.
Okay, so Afeta actually says, in Earth of the New Sun, Afeta rose, smoothing her white gown. Her floating hair, which had seemed uncanny to me when I'd seen it first, was familiar now. We have watched with the dead. Now they go, and it is time that we win also. It may be that from your ancient Earth reborn, the Hyros will come. I believe it to be so, but I'm only one woman and of no high position. I said what I did so that you would not die despairing. So Afeta actually says that she believes the Hyros will come from Earth. So that's humanity. And this
I think we all agree. I think we agree with that. But I think what the question is when she says Hyros, is she talking about her own people, or is she talking about the people who made her?
No, the people who made her. She's a larval. Clear. Is she a larval hierogrammate or a hierarch? But the Hyros come from Earth. She's saying that. I believe the Hyros come from Earth, the people. She outright says it.
I believe that. I believe that too. In fact, I think that's revealed at the end of the Book of the New Sun. I think the question about this particular quote is whether Hyros means her own people, or whether
it doesn't. It doesn't mean her. She's not talking about herself.
I don't think it's obvious about that. With the Hyros, I could say, Mark, I don't know whether humans were made on the sixth day of Earth's creation, or whether they evolved from primates. I can still refer to my own species that way.
But I think she's attended by hierarchs. Is she a larval hierogrammate? Like, we need to get to the bottom of what a feta is.
Oh, well, I have so much time to worry about that.
Yeah.
I am not going to make trouble for myself at this point.
This is a long way for a hypothetical.
Look, my hypothetical still stands. I don't want to get distracted. We can still debate forever whether Aphetta is referring to her own race or to a previous race in the Hyros. Doesn't matter. I'm just saying that it is very possible that this statue is not, as I think as close as we ever came, is the Yasadis, but the people who made the Yasadis.
Either way, one thing I think is true is that the statue is intentionally something obviously artificial, right? Like that's
created. And a memorial. It's stated as a memorial. So I think that this, though, actually can signify Severian himself, because he's the memorial to humanity, and it's actually his cenotaph that he shows up at there. The statue is going to approach him at his grave. So I think that that's all symbolically tied up to humanity and Severian, who's going to be the memorial. So it comes back to like the new sun there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Severian is a statue.
So it's Gabriel who gives this statement, and I think it's still enigmatic, to say the least. The stone images remain even when night comes, day's gone. Mere humans leave, the night comes, but the stone images remain. Let's move forward to the next act. I think this is Act 3, Act 4.
Yeah, we're still in Act 3, I think.
Yeah. Greg, why don't you start us off?
So, when the lights come up again, the Autarch is seated on his throne. He's alone on the stage, but silhouettes projected on screens to either side of him indicate that he's surrounded by his court.
So the Autarch says, "Here I sit as though the lord of 100 worlds, yet not master even of this." This is kind of interesting because the only Autarch I can think of in this entire book or series that could make the claim perhaps to have been lord of 100 worlds is Typhon, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Commonwealth Autarch is at least master of the Commonwealth. So unless this means something else.
But yeah, I remember there was a period where I thought that the Autarch was supposed to just be Typhon here, and that this was happening like in the past or something.
And then I talked Craig down from that in private correspondence. He was like, no, all right. But you know what, though? This is the thing, though. He said, here I sit as though the Lord of 100 worlds. He's not saying he is. He's saying, man, it's almost as if I had the whole universe. I'm sitting like I'm the master of the universe, and I'm not even master of this place that I am actually in charge of. So like, he's not saying he is the Lord of 100 worlds. He's just saying, it's like if I said, here I sit like a king, and I don't even run my own household well. You know, like it's exactly that scenario there. I'm not in charge of the, whatever nation it is, but I'm not even running what I'm supposed to well. So I don't think it's about Typhon. It's just, he's making a statement. Yeah, he's making a statement.
Well,
as though.
I admit that's true. In my opinion, which I'll build as we go, this could be Typhon. It could be Emar, but I think if I was going, I'm going to fall on
it's Valeria. It's Valeria. And it happens in chapter 42. This is chapter 42, Earth of the New Sun.
We'll see about that. Craig, what's the next part?
The tramp of marching men is heard off stage, and there is a shouted order.
Generalissimo! And I must point out that I have no idea who this Generalissimo is. The Generalissimo is a genuine puzzle for me. The only time I know that this term was commonly used in English was for Generalissimo Francisco Franco of Spain, who did in fact die 5 years before Wolfe finished the Book of the New Sun.
Now, in chapter 42, it's going to be the Chiliarch or the Praetorians who serves this. He's like in charge of the Praetorians there, and he's going to actually get the Contessa as well in Earth of the New Sun. So it's following this pretty much straight out of here. It's the Chiliarch.
Okay, well, we'll see.
So next is enter a prophet. He wears a goat skin and carries a staff whose head has been rudely carved into a strange symbol.
Okay, he's dressed in goat skin. And let's do the goat skin first. It's not a throwaway. Goat skin is the uniform of the Roman priests of the Lupercalia. I'm about to cite a lot of Wolfe references here. Lupercalia was a festival which took place in February and indirectly gave the month of February its name. I'll get into the etymology of that term, which is obscure, but you can, of course, hear the root word for wolf in that name, Luper. And during the festival, there was a statue of Pan set up. The Romans called him Lupercus. It was set up in front of the cave where the she-wolf nursed Romulus and Remus. And the statue was nude except for a goatskin girdle. And the cave was called the Lupercal. See the Lupercalia connection right there. And it was at the foot of Palatine Hill where Romulus was supposed to have founded Rome. And Pan was called by Justin the Lycaean god, and it's not entirely clear what he meant by calling him that, but Lycaon was the founder of the Greek race, the Greek Adam in a way, and he instituted the worship of Zeus, and he was changed by Zeus into a wolf. And of course, Pan, there's a long sun reference coming, is another form of the word pas. Okay, how about the strange symbol? Is there a symbol we should be thinking of? Could the symbol be the claw?
It could be a sun. It could be the claw. It could be, it could even be a wolf for all we know, but in general, right? Okay. So because the story of Romulus and Remus is going to come up in the Tale of the Boy Called Frog, this isn't necessarily a huge stretch to look at all these things. I've gotten some mileage out of the Lupercalia references. I think in The Old Woman Whose Rolling Pin is the Sun, in my references there, in Between Light and Shadow. But okay, so when I first, looked at some of those things that you were talking about, I'm like, man, do we always have to go so far into the weeds?
Yes, Mark. We must go into the weeds.
Yes. In this case, I do feel that maybe, the goat skin is, connected with that Lupercalian festival. So I guess I will say, okay, but we shouldn't lose the overwhelming flow here, which is this is the switch point. We had before the whole story kind of being like a Garden of Eden meeting with temptation in like a modern Autarchs court. So it was like this meeting of the past and the present, but then it's turned into kind of a prophecy of doom in this scene. So it went from here's the Garden of Eden meeting. It's like a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court, right? Like here's Adam and Eve and they're in the Autarchs court. And now suddenly we've got this prophecy of doom. So I think that we shouldn't, even though I think all that is valid, I think we should still try to keep the main flow so that people are not like, where are they going with this?
Yeah, because this is really the big shift in the play. Like this is, we were talking before, what's the third act or whatnot, but really this is the points where the play takes a total turn and it's like play two. It's like a whole second thing that happens. And I think that point where you said there about like, in the first part, it's a mix, a little bit of past and future, a little bit the temptation thing, but now we're getting to talk about the future. And that's something, we've had it before talking about the new, what's coming for Adam's new children or Meshia's new children. But here something is going different. And so that's why one thing, like when you said before about now we get the scene that's actually from Earth of the New Sun, that's all good. But I also want to keep a focus on like what happens here in the play. Like what does this new scene mean in the play?
Yeah. And okay, so it's kind of cool because a prophet is basically giving us real prophecies. Like, like he's going to tell us this is what's going to happen. And so we should listen to the prophet.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then let's someone take the role of the prophet.
I'll be prophet. I don't think I had one. So the prophet speaks. 100 portents are abroad. At Incusus, a calf was dropped that had no head, but mouthed in its knees. A woman of known propriety has dreamed she is with child by a dog. Last night a shower of stars fell hissing onto the southern ice, and prophets walk abroad in the land.
You yourself are a prophet.
The Autarch himself has seen them, which is funny.
Incusus is not an out-of-the-world place as far as I can tell. It's Latin for forged or fabricated. I haven't been able to come up with another village or town that has that name that could also be translated forged or fabricated. And I've not been able to find a reference in mythology or literature of people with mouths in their knees. Stars falling on southern ice, that could be a Hamlet's Mill mythology reference to the end of the age. But unless you guys can tie up these other things to something more specifically.
Okay, so the mouth and the knees. All right, so coming back to Fifth Head of Cerberus, my big idea, this is a minor spoiler, but not really, is that the abos are basically the final stage of their lifestyle is like a sessile tree-like stage, and that their legs are kind of planted in some scenes to renew their energy. Like if they're away from the soil for too long, they're going to die. Funny legs there. So in a way, right, if you plant yourself, you could say that your mouth is in your knees. If you were like some kind of hybridized thing between, a human being and a tree, and how you got your nutrients there. So that's the only thing I'm going to say. But do I really think that that was what Wolfe was thinking about? Maybe not, right? Maybe not.
Anything about Incusus? You guys got anything on that?
Not really. No,
Oh, okay.
Forged or fabrication. I mean, one of the things that the Hierodules can do is supposedly create worlds, right? And so they can like forge or fabricate these new worlds there. But I don't see how that would necessarily apply to anything here.
Yeah, and the one thing I think that just struck me is just it is similar to Inca, and we're in South America, and so it could just but it also then the form of it, Incusus, sounds Old Latin, so it could be just a play on.
We do have Pater Incus and Longson.
True,
but
true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just for now, I guess I'll accept that the prophet's just saying random weird portents followed by the joke, and the prophets walk abroad.
Yeah, and I do like the idea that it's like South American but Latin, and could be just for the feel of it.
Yeah. So the Autarch, who I assume is played by Talos, and the prophet is played by Severian. And if this is supposed to be the Conciliator, I guess that's appropriate.
So real quickly, I mean, we do see at the end of Earth that it's the real prophetess there who's saying, hey, but earlier in Earth, I guess Severian does act kind of like a prophet in front of Typhon. So once again, it could be a mix of multiple scenes, because in a little bit, we're going to see a scene that is both past and future, kind of mixed very freely, but they're obvious, to me anyway, that this is clearly a scene from the past and this is one that's going to be in the future. But they're, kind of not necessarily in any kind of chronological order. And so it could be the Conciliator in front of Typhon, and it could be actually chapter 42 of Earth as well,
Yeah. Okay, so the Autarch says, my archivist, who is most learned in the history of this spot, once informed me that over 100 prophets have been slain here, stoned, burned, torn by beasts, and drowned. Some have even been nailed like vermin to our doors. Now, I would learn of you something of the coming of the new sun, so long prophesied. How is it to come about? What does it mean? Speak, or we shall give the old archivist another mark for his tally and train the pale moonflower to climb that staff. So after they kill the prophet, they'll stick his staff in the garden. A moonflower blooms at night, so I guess that could represent the end of the new sun. But anyway, the prophet is supposed to preach the gospel of the new sun.
Should we just keep going? Let's just get this out there. Yeah. So the prophet says, I despair of satisfying you, but I shall attempt it.
Do you not know?
I know, but I know you for a practical man, concerned with the affairs of this universe alone, who seldom looks higher than the stars.
For 30 years, I have prided myself on that. 30 years strikes me as peculiarly specific. Agia suggested it's been 30,000 years since the time of the Conciliator. The prophet says that the details of the new sun are not a matter of this peculiar universe.
Hold on 1 second there, James. So I think really he's challenging a materialist conception of the universe of the senses. So he's saying, hey, you're an autarch who has only looked right in front of you with your senses. You've only seen with your eyes. You see the stars that you look at, but there's more to it beyond this universe. Things of like more, religious or theological or even Gnostic concerns here. So I think he's challenging that materialism, these heavenly things. But I want to say the 30 years, how long is Severian gone from the time he disappears to the time
40 years, I thought.
He's gone for 40, but that's what that's referring to. That's what that's referring to, because it's when he comes back there. It's been that time since Valeria took over.
Well, I don't think we need to get metaphysical in this story, because we have in this book multiple references to other universes and outside the universe.
If you say so.
Okay. Well, I do. Do you have anything to say, Craig?
Nope.
Okay, go speak, prophet.
The prophet continues, yet even you must know that cancer eats the heart of the old sun. At its center, matter falls in upon itself, as though there were there a pit without bottom whose top surrounds it.
Here we get a explanation of why the sun is dying. We've heard that it has something to do with a worm in his heart, and here it's called a cancer. At its center, matter falls in upon itself as though there were a pit without bottom whose top surrounded. This is a straightforward explanation of the black hole in the center of the sun and the event horizon.
And I would just say that line about matter, just since, I do agree with Mark that there's been, at least the prophet is the one who at least kind of says, you've never looked higher. And so then that is a materialist kind of thing. And then to describe the black hole as sort of matter falling in on itself is kind of like matter needs something else to sustain it. So a black hole is kind of like a good Wolfian take on what materialism by itself would be like. And
it's not clear to a first-time reader how the black hole was put there, but it will be made clear that it was the hierogrammats in the citadel of the Autarch, right? Regarding the black hole in the sun, he says, the Autarch says, "My astronomers have long told me so."
Prophet, think on an apple rotten from the bud, fair still without until it collapses into foulness at last.
Every man who finds himself still strong in the latter half of life has thought on that fruit. I think this is a joke about male virility in old age.
I'm not so sure. I mean, it might be, but it's also about, you look young and healthy on the outside, but inside you feel the effects of age, and you're kind of a shadow of what you once were, even though you're still seemingly viral, or healthy or capable. There's still something that's fading into dissolution there.
It's a whole lot easier to see everybody's failings the older you get. That's for sure. So the prophet, so much then for the old sun, but what of its cancer? What know we of that, save that it deprives earth of heat and light, and at last of life? So then we hear sounds of struggle are heard off stage. There's a scream of pain and a crash as though a large vase has been knocked from its pedestal.
Autarch says, "We will learn what that commotion is soon enough, prophet. Continue." Okay, we'll wait with the audience on this one. Let's proceed as the Autarch commanded.
Okay. We know it to be far more, for it is a discontinuity in our universe, a rent in its fabric, bound by no law we know. From it nothing comes. All enters in, naught escapes. Yet from it anything may appear, for it alone of all the things we know is no slave to its own nature.
Yeah, he's describing the black hole as a rent in the fabric of the universe, right?
Seems to me, yes.
Yeah. The point about being no slave to its own nature is interesting, but we can come back to that because I don't really know what to do with it. But yeah, so then enter Nod, bleeding, prodded by pikes held off stage.
Autarch says, "What is this miscreation?"
Prophet, the very proof of those portents I spoke to you. In future times, so it has long been said, the death of the old sun will destroy earth, but from its grave will rise monsters, a new people in the new sun. Old earth will flower then as a butterfly from its dry husk, and the new earth shall be called Ushas.
Yet all we know will be swept aside, this ancient house in which we stand, yourself, me. I think most readers read the assertion of the coming of the new sun, quote, sweep aside everything metaphorically. I think that's what they originally did before Earth and the new sun. But it was to be read quite literally and physically.
Right. And this tells us, everything that's going to happen. I mean, you're going to get these cataclysmic monsters, these events, and then you get a new people to carry forward. And then that transformation like a butterfly from its dry husk. I mean, it really is powerful imagery, I think. And it's beautiful. And when you read Earth of the New Sun, I think so many people get caught up in the flood. Everybody's dead. This is so terrible. But they don't look at, the promise of that better tomorrow that is somehow still in there, but I think so many different readers approach that a little bit differently, depending on how they feel about whether the ends justifies the means and stuff like that.
Yeah. And the butterfly here, of course, is sad kill imagery, right? Or if,
yes, but I mean, it's
in
part
some way or another, it's there. It definitely connects to what he's saying.
Yeah, sure. Though, how does Baldanders as Nod represent proof of the coming of the new sun? If it is, quote, from the grave of the old earth will rise monsters, a new people. Well, Nod here is not a future monster. He's a present monster. Is there a sense that the Megatherians are going to rise with the coming of the new sun?
No, it said the death of the old sun, and you get its grave. So I think it's been dying for a while, and while it's dying, these monsters and things will spring up because these things are going to come, monsters and new people and the new sun. It doesn't say the new sun is going to bring monsters. So they could be from the death throes of the old planet. So he doesn't have to be a future monster, really.
Yeah.
And also, Nod himself says that, whatever he is not important. It's more what his daughter and Meshia's son's offspring are going to be. Like, that's going to be the new thing. And so Nod himself could be a monster. But the suggestion here is that maybe there's something that will come from...
That's less monstrous.
That I don't know. And if you want to be super literal, you could say, okay, so are the Megatherians supposed to like mesh with humanity somewhere? And I don't think that's quite it, because remember that Nod also talked about himself as more the physical side of Earth, and that humanity had something higher, but that what was going to happen was the new race that comes out is going to be like the Green Man, where they somehow take the physical world and, to use good things with Wolfe, they're going to evolve everything. Like, it's not just some idea of like matter versus spirit. There's actually development and evolution in all these things. And in some ways, the Green Man is a higher form of biological, physical life that actually is even, I guess, in many ways more sane and less destructive, because he feeds directly on light and instead of, having to kill for his food and all that kind of stuff. So there may be something there that what Nod is representing, rather than just being Baldanders or just be the Megatherians, is something about that sort of that old Earth as maybe a little too physical, like not developed, not evolved enough, and needing to become something else.
Real quickly, one of the things I think is most interesting in Wolfe is that sometimes you'd think he would support something pretty wholeheartedly, and then in his stories, it's way more complex. Like, for example, in The Hero is Werewolf, that short story, you have basically transhumans who eat post-humans, or whatever you want to call them, who no longer eat, and they have those psionic abilities, but they've also left behind something of what it means to be human in that. There's a lot of compassion that's missing, and they try to eliminate faults and defects by destroying it instead of living with it and understanding it. There's still compassion to be had there. So neither side is truly complete without the other, but it's really interesting whether the Green Man fills this. Is he really, really more perfect, or are there new problems that come along with that evolution?
Yeah. Yep. And I think the way that Long Sun and Short Sun work out, there are just more problems. There's always more problems.
So, so Nod reflects on the coming of the new sun. I guess the only person we have left open to take the role of Nod is Mark here.
I have no wisdom, yet I heard a wise man, soon to be a relative of marriage, say not long ago that all that is for the best.
And that was Meshia, who said the coming of the new sun would be for the best. And Meshia, Nod repeats, will be a relative by marriage. And I think there is meaning here. More meaning than merely that Severian joins with Thekla, a minion of Abi. I think it might have something to do with a connection between Thekla and Juturno, but I really cannot say anything specific.
James, I feel like we've beaten this to death on a drum, that the new mankind being mingled with something else in its future. So I don't know why you're looking at only individuals. And this is about the future of humanity, and it's mingling with, something else that's kind of streamlined back into it. So, okay, fine. Okay, so Nod here says, we are but dreams, and dreams possess no life by their own right. See, I am wounded, and he holds out his hand. When my wound heals, it will be gone. Should it with its bloody lips say it is sorry to heal? I'm only trying to explain what another said, but that is what I think he meant.
This, I do agree, is all metaphor. You'll be happy to know. Earth is a wound on the universe and needs healing, so the wound must be destroyed so healthy new flesh can be there instead. Right?
Okay, I think in essence you're right, but I think it's a richer metaphor even than that, even down to kind of the Felix culpa, right? When you're injured, there's a chance to heal. So these bloody lips that are formed, it's going to close up. Should it utter that it's sorry to exist? So evil, then, I think even this is an apologia for the existence of evil there, right? Should evil, or something that's not seen as good, apologize for the hurt that it causes, or does it create other opportunities of healing along the way?
And there's also the idea about, this is one way to look at the flood in Earth as not necessarily a bad thing. If you are part of a degenerate race, degenerate in all kinds of ways. Like if you're part of a race that could be something better and you insist on maintaining yourself rather than evolving,
are you really doing good? I mean, there's all kinds of questions that brings up right there. So we hear deep bells toll off stage.
Yeah, and the bells portend the coming of the new sun. But let's remember some of the places those tolling bells have come up in this book. When Severian meets Olton, when Severian meets Agilus, and when Severian shows the claw to the man-apes. When he's drowning in the Guile, you have Malrubius clanging his spoon on the bulkhead.
But yeah, bells are always something about the new sun coming. There will always be bells in the morning, just like Milton. Just like Milton had.
But the Autarch here hears those bells as well. He says, what's that? You, prophet, go and see who's ordered that clamor and why.
And the prophet leaves.
And notice he tells the prophet to go and see who ordered that clamor. He's sending the prophet at the Conciliator, I say, to go and see what's going on with those bells.
I mean, in chapter 42, it's going to be the girl from the hut that's Severian healed. I mean, so it's not really the Conciliator he's sending when the scene actually comes to fruition. But, whatever. Okay, so Nod here says, I feel sure your bells have begun the welcome of the new sun. It's what I came to do myself. It's our custom when an honored guest arrives to roar and beat our chests and pound the ground and the trunks of trees all about with gladness and lift the greatest rocks we can and send them down the gorges in honor of him. I will do that this morning if you will set me free, and I feel sure Earth herself will join me. The very mountains will leap into the sea when the new sun rises up today.
Yes, this is another reference to the flooding of Earth. But the Megatherians are the size of mountains, and most of them, at least, are below the sea already. But Baldanders, it seems, is trying to become a Megatherian, live forever by continuously growing, and he will leap into the sea at the end of his fight with Severian.
Sure, but James, I just want to say that sometimes a mountain leaping into the sea is just a mountain leaping into the sea.
I'm pretty sure that a mountain leaping into the sea is never just a mountain leaping into the sea. Every time I've seen it, it's really meant something special.
It's Godzilla.
So the Autarch says, and where did you come from? Tell me, and I'll release you.
Why, from my own country, to the east of paradise.
And where is that?
Nod points to the east.
I think we've already pointed out that Adam and Eve, when they were cast out of Eden, they settled east of Eden, which is the reference in the title to that Steinbeck novel. And Nod, the owner of the land that Cain fled, the place where Cain took his wife, is presumably also east of Eden. And the Autarch says, and where is paradise? In the same direction?
Why, this is paradise. We're in paradise. Or at least under it.
This is interesting to me indeed. This scene, not the play itself, is taking place underground, I guess, in the House Absolute, but maybe not. So Nod might be saying that Earth itself is Eden, but the House Absolute is in the underworld. So the House Absolute, I don't know, could be hell, which is the beginning of paradise. In Jesus' parable of the beggar Lazarus, paradise is adjacent to hell. Actually, it's within talking distance. And also in C.S. Lewis's The Great Divorce, hell is merely a tiny portion of dirt on the very edge of heaven.
So I don't like where you're going with that too much, James, where you're like, okay, they must be in hell right now, when he just said this is paradise, right?
Well, alternatively, the play is taking place outside. Paradise could just refer to the heavens above them. Heaven is never far from us if we look.
Sure, but in Earth of the New Sun, there's a line where he's talking about the world, and he says, we could make this Earth a paradise if we tried to, if we were good to one another, if we behaved as we could make the world like that. So I think the potential to make something a paradise is also ensconced in this verbiage.
There's also a way of thinking. I like the way that he says this is paradise, or at least we're under it. And there is kind of a little bit of a Neoplatonic sense.
Yes,
there,
exactly.
Which is that anything has the potential to be better. You can always, there's always, that's what evolution is about, but that's also what sort of self-improvement is about. It's what morality is about, is that you're never either as a finite thing, you're never fully saved or fully damned. Like the potential to be better is always there. And there's never a sense like even if you were quote unquote in hell, the story's not over, and you can still work towards intellectually or morally or historically, you can always work to make things better. And so that's, to me, to say like, oh, this is paradise. Like this has very much all the potential of paradise is right here. We're under it, or we're to say like we're at least under it. I think that's a little bit more kind of like, or at least we have the potential for it.
Yeah,
the perfect things are, they're in the sky, as it were, but we just need to bring them down to earth to actually make this into a literal paradise now.
As I've said before, I think that the philosophical transformation that occurs, it starts with solipsistic Gnosticism, where he's like, the real world is Misties of Air, is just a construct of the human mind. And eventually gets to that everything descends from the hand of God. It's real, and it's all holy. So I think that transformation from a Gnostic kind of fallen world that's illusion to Neoplatonic perfection almost, or perfectibility, is truly written into the book and its progression intentionally.
Yeah. So now we have enter the Generalissimo, who marches to the throne and salutes.
So assuming we're correct that the Autarch is Talos and Baldanders is still Nod, then the Generalissimo is surely played by Severian. So think about this. Why do we need a Generalissimo? If this is just a throwaway minion, why couldn't the role have been played by the second soldier? I just think there are more peculiarities about this scene.
Well, as I said a little bit earlier, I mean, when this comes up, he is going to be the Chiliarch of the Praetorians.
Not a major role, even
no,
in that
not a major role, but he does actually, act a little bit as kind of the head there, and he shows up in like 2 scenes or so when the older prophetess is talking about Baldanders coming to warn the Autarch, just as she herself is. So he's part of that witness to the warning, and the Praetorians also pick up the Contessa and take her someplace safe in Earth of the New Sun as well. So he's present in those scenes.
There's also just his mere presence is like, I mean, think about these characters we have on stage. You've got a leader of some sort who has already been established that he's kind of like a representative of what a god should be. You've got the prophet who, as James said, is kind of serving the role of the savior, or at least giving the message of the conciliator. You've got Nod, who's kind of like somebody who could be transformed into something else. Well, now you got a Generalissimo who isn't just a soldier, but is actually a sort of the large scale representation of like taking responsibility for war and for damaging other people. Connecting him to the Autarch, it's bringing in, if there are problems here with this earth that needs to get wiped clean, one problem maybe is that we just still have a Generalissimo. Like that's kind of my thing about like, I know we're going to get that character in Earth, but like, okay, why do we even need a character like that? And I feel like just the reminder that this is a warlike society where you have some kind of, military dude who is apparently second to the Autarch. Yeah, that it's sort of it's the closest thing, at least in this scene, we get to, okay, Prophet just said that the old Earth is horrible and awful. Well, Nod doesn't seem really bad right here. The Autarch maybe is a little selfish and he's kind of materialist. Okay, but why is that so bad? Well, we do have a Generalissimo. Like we have violent, warlike people all around here. So there is that.
All right, Craig, you can be the Generalissimo.
Okay. So, Autarch, we have searched all the land above this house absolute as you ordered. The Contessa Carina has been found, and her injuries not being serious, escorted to her apartments. We've also found the Colossus you see before you, the bejeweled woman you described, and 2 merchants.
What of the other 2? The naked man and his wife?
There's no trace of them.
Repeat your search, and this time look well.
And he salutes and says, as my Autarch wills.
And I suppose the Generalissimo exits.
Takes off, yep.
Yeah. So here's something of it else. This is a non sequitur. The Autarch did not in this play order anyone to search for the Contessa, and we've never seen her in peril. The reference to her injuries not being serious could be a joke about the way the Praetorians on the House Absolute grounds helpfully find visitors, and perhaps the soldiers themselves injured her, but not seriously.
Yeah, because, the last thing we saw the Autarch do was run away.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And they've also been sent to find Meshia and Meshian, but that was unsuccessful. I don't know where Meshia has gone. Of course, the actor was right there, but I don't think we're going to see him for the rest of this play. Any theories about that?
Well, when the new sun comes, I mean, we don't necessarily have to see him in action to know what he represents, right? That new race. And so in the scene in Earth of the New Sun, actually, he hasn't arrived until just about this scene. And they're like, oh, they've landed a man and woman on the gardens there, So it's like when he disappears in the play is when he shows up in Earth of the New Sun at about that point.
I'm just interested in the merchants. Like, why two merchants?
They're the Herjules.
Oh,
really.
Yeah,
they're the demons in disguise.
Yeah, I know. I'm just kind of curious, like, why call them?
Well, what are they selling? What exactly are these guys selling us?
Yep.
Well, yeah. But of course, Jahi was captured.
And in this scene in Earth of the New Sun, you're going to have a prophetess, right? Who is that girl? You're going to have Valeria as the Autarch. You're going to have Baldanders as Nod, who's been bloodied and poked by the pikes there as he's brought before the Autarch. And then you're going to have the character who represents Jahi coming in. She is Juturna. She is Juturna. I've told you this over and over and over. She's Juturna. So that's going to happen in Earth of the New Sun.
Baldanders is not bloodied when he's
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Earth of the New Sun, 42. He is parting his lank hair with bloody hands. In Earth of the New Sun, chapter 42. He's bloody.
Well, he's okay. All right. But he's not been bloodied.
He's been bloodied up by these guys. He's been roughed up.
Okay. So the Autarch says, and have the jeweled woman sent to me.
And Nod begins to walk off stage, but is stopped by pikes, and the Generalissimo draws his pistol.
Am I not free to leave?
By no means.
I told you where my country lies, just east of here.
More than your country lies. I know that area well.
So the Generalissimo disputes Nod's claim to the location and existence of the land of Nod. And the Autarch, Fatigue, says, he has told the truth as he knows it. Perhaps the only truth there is. Perhaps it seems fishy, but it is a nice summary of the meaning of an unreliable narrator.
And of Wolfe's, you get a moment there of Wolfe's, everything comes from a perspective and you have to know it. But New Sun of all this stuff is very much about, you have a perspective, but the truth is breaking in different ways. So the fact that the Autarch is the one who would say, perspective, truth, that's all there really is. This Autarch who only looks at the world, that would be his position. And the trick of New Sun is all about, well, how do you get outside of that perspective? So.
And then Nod says, then I'm free to go.
I think that he whom you came to welcome will arrive whether you are free or not. I gather this means the New Sun, right?
Yep.
I think so.
Yet there is a chance, and such creatures such as you cannot be allowed to roam abroad in any case. No, you are not free, nor ever again will be. So Nod is imprisoned. Baldanders never is. Abia never is. I propose that this is the being, quote, under the mountain that rattled its chains.
Oh, James, I'm telling you, man, this is the scene where Baldanders is brought before Valeria there. And then what's coming up after this is actually a call backwards in time from that to when Severian and Baldanders will fight in Sword of the Lictor. So it's like this is a more future scene, and then the play will go backwards a little bit, but it's still a future scene in comparison to where the play is located. So this is mixing a couple scenes, but not as always Baldanders in these cases.
So I'm more interested in the idea of not being free, and Baldanders, in a sense, at the end of Earth of the New Sun, he is not, even though he's not imprisoned, nobody's really free at that point. Everybody's subject to the flood. Everybody's subject to this kind of weird forced evolution, I guess, that's happening.
Well, Baldanders isn't a threat, though, is he? You can flood the whole world.
At the end of Earth of the New Sun
dies. I assume he dies. Jahi dies. I mean, by the end of it, it's the flood kind of makes whatever plans the Megatherians had null and void. It makes Baldanders not really give him a place. So even though we don't actually see him die, the fact that there's basically no Earth for him to live on, I mean, I think it kind of is.
He doesn't care.
I actually
have a theory, but Can't bring it up till the
Don't bring it up. Okay, hold on. No new theories.
I will bring it up.
Yeah.
But not as much as I'll do.
Okay, so in that chapter though, they both, Juturna and Baldanders, both make great lens to say, we've come to warn you. We've come to help you, to save you. Even Abaya wants what's best for you. He just thinks that what's best for you is different than what you think is best for you, right? And so explicitly in that chapter, Baldanders is set up as somebody who's not an enemy of the new sun, and he said he destroyed the claw of the Conciliator because he thought it was a crutch that would keep him from, realizing his potential, that it was just something in the way of the truth. But he said he didn't fully understand, but they're allies in a way by that chapter, which is this scene that we're getting here.
Yeah. And it just seems like that saying that you're not free. I think it's another one of those weird speaking out of two sides of his mouth at once. Like, it's true that Nod at this point is a prisoner of this worldly Autarch who he's not going to let him go back to his homeland. But there's also a sense in which he's no longer free because Nod has basically committed his legacy to whatever Messiah is going to become. Right. And so it's true in a couple ways. It's weird. This one is where I feel like I can get some sort of larger meaning out of it, but
and Baldanders is also a victim of what he's done to himself to make himself so
true.
large and to keep growing. Like he's not free to walk around on land anymore. He's changed as a result of that, and even his memory and everything has changed.
Yeah. So Nod rushes from the stage, pursued by the Generalissimo. Shots, screams, and crashes. The figures around the Autarch fade. In the midst of the uproar, the bells toll again. Nod re-enters with a laser burn across one cheek. The Autarch strikes him with his scepter. Each blow produces an explosion and a burst of sparks. Nod seizes the Autarch and is about to dash him to the stage when two demons, disguised as merchants, enter, throw him down, and restore the Autarch to his throne.
By the way, Talos has included some nice stage effects with the explosion and sparks there.
Yeah, and this is pretty much a call to the scene in Sword of the Lictor where Baldanders and Severian fight,
There's a lot, except there's no Severian in here, right? I mean,
it doesn't matter, but he will be the Autarch someday. So as I said, this is like a prognostication where Severian fades into the Autarch's role for this one thing when they're fighting there because he's going to be the Autarch, even though he's not in Sword of the Lictor. So once again, it's that mutability of character where we had a far future scene and then it morphs into what's going to be a near future scene with instead of Valeria, it's Severian in the role of the Autarch, or to be the Autarch.
It's that sort of whole thing that Wolfe is so good at with his dreams, right? Of just it's this dream logic of shifting stuff. Yeah, just frustrating as hell, but cool. And
also in that fight, who's there at the castle are the Herajules, right? They're there.
But they don't save Severian.
No, but their machinations kind of actually cause the conflict a little bit.
Well, then that's the opposite of the demons.
Hey, who can say?
And the two demons, as I said, prevent the Autarch from being dashed to death by Nod. The demons overpower Nod and put the Autarch on his throne. They literally, once again, they put him on his throne.
They kneel to Severian when he shows up in front of Baldanders, and it pisses him off. So this is exactly that scene.
I think beginning here, it becomes clear that this scene, for a lot of reasons, is the ancient defeat of Abaya and Erebus when the Asians made it nearly to the Citadel.
I don't think that's clear, James.
I think it's clear. It's getting clearer. So these demons, of course, we agree, are the Herajules, who not only keep the Autarch in power with their otherworld technology and weapons, but also, I think, put Nod in his place. So I think the defeat of the Ogre and the Tailed Student Sun occurred around this point.
So, James, this reminds me of something that Thomas Becket was supposed to have said. The last temptation is the greatest treason. Do the right thing for the wrong reason. And so that's kind of how I feel about your conclusion. It's right, but not necessarily for the right reason.
I was going to say, you are starting to circle towards each other there a little bit. But
yeah.
But I mean, Talos is the one who says, hey, our experience here has ripples back in time and causes people to think about it in terms of Frankenstein and whatnot. I mean, why could that also not be sort of how Abaya and Erebus worked out?
Sure, but it's really about the fight between Severian and Baldanders. I mean, that's what it is in the book.
Well, I mean, but you've just moved from Earth of the New Sun suddenly
to Sword of the Lictor. And I'm telling you that this moves across times like that. Like some scenes are clearly about like, okay, this is, Aegea and Jolenta arguing with each other. And,
I mean, if you want to be too picky about it, I mean, the bells tolled at the beginning of the last scene when we said we moved from a story about sort of a general what's going to come in the future to a scene that Mark says is in the real future. Bells toll. We move there. Now the bells toll here again. Maybe the bells are about sort of shifting perspectives or times or something like that. Otherwise, there's no real reason why these bells would toll. Like the bell tolls here in the midst of the uproar, the bells toll again.
Well, I mean, ask not for whom the bell tolls; it tolls for Earth.
Yeah.
That says. I mean, that's what it's really. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just getting multiple meanings.
We definitely should ask for whom the bells toll, because I think the tolling bells and the interpretation and the meaning for what it meant to Wolfe for these bells tolling is real. And when they toll is really interesting to me. And I don't have a grasp on it because they toll at kind of strange places.
Fair enough.
So the Autarch says, "Thank you. You will be richly rewarded. I had given up hope of being rescued by my guards, and I see I thought rightly. May I ask who you are?" And that's a good question. Are these actors Dorcas and Jolenta? I assume they are. And we're going to learn that the guards were not merely cowering. Nod killed them before attacking the Autarch.
So I'll be first demon. So
and I'll be second demon.
First demon says, "Your guards are dead. That giant has smashed their skulls against your walls and broken their spines upon his knees."
Second demon says, "We're two traitors merely. Your soldiers took us up."
Would that the dead soldiers were traitors, and in their places I had such soldiers as you. And yet you are in appearance so slight. I would think you incapable of even ordinary strength.
First demon bows and says, "Our strength is inspired by the master we serve."
Who is their master? The new sun, I guess.
Okay, so second demon, you'll wonder why we, two commonplace traders and slaves, should have been found wandering your grounds by night. The fact is that we came to warn you. Our travels but lately took us to the northern jungles, and there in a temple older than man, a shrine overgrown with rank vegetation until it seemed hardly more than a leafy mound. We spoke to an ancient shaman who foretold great peril to your realm.
Is this the Green Man? Where's the temple? Is the village in the anti-New Sun Wizards? The ancient shaman, Apu Punchao? The Green Man heard from Apu Punchao that the Commonwealth was a threat from an attack of the Asians?
No, James, all right? The new sun is coming. Like, it's going to wipe away all this stuff. I mean, it's not necessarily about that temporal struggle there that they're going through. I mean, it's the threat to humanity itself. Now, we do get, though, at the end of Citadel, the Autarch, right? Isn't that kind of in the jungle there where they crash? And that's where he kind of ascends to become the Autarch. So that's where the Autarch actually is going to die in the fields up there in the northern jungles. That's where he's going to meet his fate, and Severian will become the Autarch. And so, I mean, it does tie in a little bit to actual scenes, which makes me feel like we've reversed roles a little bit, where we're looking for actual scenes from the book that this corresponds to.
It could still be some Apu Punchao connection.
Yeah, it could.
That there is still sort of this recognition that, hey, there's this guy who kind of presages a lot of the stuff that's going to be happening. Yeah. The weird thing is just that here they're the Hieroduals like that, but they say they learned it from a guy. But I don't know. The actual Hieroduals are weird anyway, because they're Hieros, but they're slaves.
Which is the word term that means holy slave? Is it Hierodual? Okay, and here they say we're traders and slaves. Mm-hmm. So it kind of directly links them. Yeah.
Yep. So the first demon says, "With that intelligence, we hastened here to give you the alarm before it should be too late, arriving at the very wince of time."
What must I do?
Second demon says, "This world that you and we treasure has now been driven around the sun so often that the warp and woof of its space grow threadbare and fall as dust and feeble lint from the loom of time.
The continents themselves are as old as rattled women, long since stripped of beauty and fertility. The new sun comes.
I know.
And he will send them crashing into the sea like foundered ships."
Again, it's obvious what the intent of this conversation is now with Earth the New Sun under our belt. And I'm sure most people took it figuratively at first. And that if they read the play carefully rather than skimming at this point, which I confess I did,
Yeah, and so I mean, it's pretty clear. You know, I've argued this so many times that it's very clear that Wolfe had this flood in mind. The coming of the new sun will bring, hey, boom, everything's going to crash into the sea. It's mentioned multiple times in this play. So if you realize this is a prophecy, right, then you know it's pretty clearly set. But how to get there from what we had without Earth of the New Sun being published? Nowadays, I feel like I would pick up on it. Obviously, when I read it the first time when I was a little kid, I certainly didn't, and I was surprised by that ending. And I think everyone who's honest with themselves would say that they would be, unless they're super familiar with Wolfe and his techniques and the foreshadowing, and they put a lot of stock in that imagery. So the second demon here says, "And from the sea lift new, glittering with gold, silver, iron, and copper, with diamonds, rubies, and turquoises, lands wallowing in the soil of 1,000,000 millennia, so long ago washed down to the sea."
Now, this is interesting. The continents themselves are used up of resources, but on the sea floor, there are more, and that will be the continents of the new earth.
First demon, to people these lands, a new race is prepared. The humankind you know will be shouldered aside, even as the grass that has prospered on the plains so long yields to the plow and so gives way to wheat.
The new race, the green men and beyond.
So what the first demon said there is basically, hey, humankind is going to be cast aside like the grass. It's cut down and wheat is going to come up there. It's not just grass. It's going to be nourishing wheat. It's better, right? And so the second demon here reveals the ambitions of Jahi, right? When he says, "But what if the seed were burned? What then? The tall man and the slight woman you met not long ago are such seed. Once it was hoped that it might be poisoned in the field, but she who was dispatched to accomplish it has lost sight of the seed now among the dead grass and broken clods, and for a few sleights of hand has been handed over to your inquisitor for strict examination. Yet the seed might be burned still." So here he's saying that someone was sent to poison that wheat before it ever comes to fruition, right? Jahi, if she insinuates herself in there into the race, it will not be wheat. It'll be something else like chaff, or who knows exactly what it's going to be. But he's like, what if we burn everything there, right? And so the question is, whose side is the demon on? Does he want to burn that seed or not? Now, the Hierodules clearly don't. They want humanity to ascend there. So have they shifted again into like more of, you know, like Idas's position or the sailors on Earth? It's really interesting to think about the point of view of these demons here and whether what do these demons in the play want?
Is there some suggestion in there that the Megatherians were once working for the Assadis, basically, or that they're sort of like fallen angels in a certain sense?
The only thing could probably be that the similarities between Zadkiel and his ability to kind of pinch off little copies of himself, and what some people say is something like a Megatherian in Scylla and Mother on, you know, in a later book, in Book of the Short Sun, and whether she can actually do something similar or not with Sirach, you know, so.
Yeah, and so now here, Jahi's task is exactly the opposite of the woman in Jonas's story, of the woman with the 5 beans. And that's a mystery that Mantis thinks he solved. I don't know, maybe. I feel like we're supposed to more specifically identify that woman. The only woman in this story whose origins are suspiciously obscure to me, not to everyone I admit, is Agia.
You mean the story of the woman with the 5 beans, or just Jahi?
I feel like that woman, we're supposed to find her. We're supposed to recognize her somewhere. And all this feels, in this little description by the second demon, it feels very specific to me. But now I'm forced to explain Jahi again, and maybe Agia. But the fact that Jahi has been handed over to the Inquisitor, implies Thekla or Thea. So let's take this in pieces. Who dispatched Jahi, the Queen of Hell, or Juturna, if you prefer?
Yeah, I mean Abaya and everybody there.
But like she does nothing but save Severian even after he's brought the new sun.
But what is she's an Undyne? She's a bride of Abaya. No, but she doesn't remember saving him when the scene comes up in Earth of the New Sun.
Yeah, but when he tells her, she says, "Oh, well, now that you've told me, yes, I definitely will go back and save you." Now she, right?
What if she never saved him?
I think Severian asked that question himself at the end of Citadel of the Autarch.
Like, no, what if she didn't actually save him in his life, and he's just an Eidolon that was resurrected from the child that died there, and instead she threw him down threw him down to the bottom. And then, I don't think that's textual, but isn't he confused about up and down in that scene too?
He is very good. I mean, that is, we kind of thought about that when we were looking at that event as well.
And then it would be, but I mean, she claims to have saved him, I think, in Claw the Conciliator, or later on when she shows up at a certain scene, she does say that she saved him. Otherwise, if she denied it in Earth, I'd be like, maybe she didn't throw him up, maybe she threw him down to the bottom and then he's just in an eidolon all along. But I don't know that anything except the skull underground points to that and the statement that she threw me down.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, I don't see anything in Juturna's story that puts her at trying to poison Severian. I mean, maybe if he had taken her up on the offer and gone to the bottom of the sea, things might have gone differently.
Look at what the second demon says. She who was dispatched to accomplish it has lost sight of the seed among the dead grass and broken clods. So she kind of like lost track of her goal too. Like, she's kind of foundering there. Like she knows who Messiah is, right? But maybe she's become actually sympathetic to him a little bit and actually desires, what's best for him as well. I mean, that's kind of speculation there, but I think that it's more than just, she can't find him. It's like she's lost sight of the kind of goal there among the dead grass and broken clods, humanity, right? That the dead grass is humanity. So she's become maybe more human in her perceptions.
So the Autarch says, the thought you suggest has already passed through my own mind.
Of course.
So the Autarch ostensibly is taking their idea and assuming it is his own, and the demons are happy to agree, but it could also imply their knowledge of the future. So the Autarch says, but would the death of those two truly halt the coming of the new sun? Even if Jahi were successful in poisoning them poisoning the seed, would that prevent the coming of the new sun?
No, but would you wish it? The new land shall be yours.
So killing Messiah and Messian would not stop the new sun from coming, but so who the heck are they and why do they matter? I mean,
come on, James, they're the sailors that are dropped off.
I'm not getting on board that. You can just sit there and wave at me from the boat. I know that I'm not going to get on that boat. So you can read the end there.
So as the two demons vanish, Nod sits up. The cities and hills fade, and the screens show the image of the Autarch multiplied many times. And
okay. All right. Okay. Stand back. I'm vibrating because at last, gentlemen, there's something going on in this stupid play that I understand clearly. Okay. And remember, this is the part of the play that is particularly important to the Harajuls in the audience because they have not experienced this even yet. This is news to them about what is going to happen to them, what has already happened on Earth. And I've been wondering about the purpose of this play and what it's for. And this part, for sure, is for them.
Hold on 1 second, James. Don't they go backwards in time?
Yes, exactly. Because this is not in the future, Mark. This
it is the future. It's chapter 42.
Settle down. I'm going to try and explain this to you. The Autarch here is maybe Typhon, maybe Emar, or a combination of both of them. The Conciliator comes and he predicts the new sun. Remember, at this point, there is no Earth of the new sun. When Wolfe wrote this, I don't think he's really even agreed conceptually until after Claude the Conciliator is on its way to printing. So none of the plans for Earth of the New Sun are, even a germ in Wolfe's eyes. This is for first-time readers who have only this book. The Conciliator comes and he predicts the new sun. So if this is Typhon, well, the word Autarch is just a convention since, he's likely called something else. If it's Emar, then he encounters the Conciliator in the Manachin Tower. Certainly the way the Autarch talks, he sounds more like Typhon. The Conciliator exits. So everything at that point that happens is after Conciliator Severian leaves the scene and goes to the future, as he did in Earth of the New Sun. Is the Autarch Typhon at this point or Emar? It doesn't matter, but I like the story that the original part was Typhon, so I'm going to tell it that way. Enter the Megatherians as Nod. I've suggested that maybe this play is not about our past, but that of a previous universe iteration. The existence of the Conciliator, in my opinion, means that at least this partition of the play, that cannot be true. It has to be this universe. So with the coming of the Conciliator, the Megatherians start getting involved in continental politics. And this runs them at odds with the Autarch. The details of how they got at odds is not clear to me, but the reason, well, the Megatherians are interested in the one who will bring the new sun. That's clear from what Baldander says. The Autarch, I'm going to say it was Typhon who dealt falsely with the Megatherians in some way. The play suggests that the Megatherian was captured, which brings me to mind again of that thing north of the wall of Nessus. I like it that it was Typhon who chained it there because it explains why there's no knowledge of it in Severian's memory or of the House Absolute records. Severian can only guess at what it was. So it was Typhon who defeated Erebus and chained him there. And I'm lured by various elements in the Tale of the Student and the Sun to believe that Severian was involved. It seems improbable in the extreme that Severian could be the Generalissimo. Whether the Autarch is Typhon or Emar, he'd be recognized as the Conciliator. But there is a revolution that Typhon chooses to sleep off because, he can't flee the planet. And that revolution clearly brings Emar to power, and the mountain chain north of Nessus contrives with Abaya to wreak vengeance on the rulers of the Commonwealth, and is very nearly successful. We learn that the invaders got nearly to the Citadel. But just at the last moment, when the armies of the Commonwealth are almost completely defeated, just before the Megatherians are victorious, two demons arrive, Famulus and Barbatus, the Hierodules. They bring their space-age weapons and their extra-universal logistics and defeat the armies of the Ischians, and that's why the Wall of Nessus was built so far in the north. It's located just south of that Megatherian chain there. And the Hierodules say, "We came to warn you. Our travels but lately took us to the northern jungles, and there, in a temple, older than man, a shrine overgrown with rank vegetation until it seemed hardly more than a leafy mound, we spoke to an ancient shaman who foretold great peril to your realm. And that ancient shaman is Talos. And the shrine overgrown with rank vegetation until it hardly seemed more than a leafy mound, that is House Absolute. Boom. Now, the play gets a little more vague for me because I don't understand Messier or Messiana or Jahi. But the Hierodules tell Emar something along the lines of, but what if the seed were burned? What then? The tall man, the slight woman you met not long ago are such a seed. Once it was hoped that it might be poisoned in the field, blah, 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 blah. You guys got it. There is a woman that Jahi represents, and there is a tall man and a slight woman, and admittedly that sounds a lot like Severian and his grandmother Dorcas, and now I'm starting to understand the theories that Dorcas was assassinated by shadowy forces. But as always, the villainess seeking to stop the new sun, the villainess who definitely calls to mind that woman in Jonas's story with the seeds, that villainess who, she just looks thematically a lot like Agia, but I don't get Agia, so I don't get that woman. But let's leave that out because we have more story that I do understand. The Hierodules tell the Autarch that if he agrees to take the test, he will survive the coming of the new sun. He'll be Autarch of the new world, the new lands shall be yours because he will live on in Severian. Emar agrees. He makes the cruel choice for the Commonwealth. May never the new sun see what we do here. Ships sweep us over with flames till all is sear. So this is the blocking of the roads, the prevention of the Commonwealth's progress. And finally, as the two demons vanish, Nod sits up, the cities and hills fade, and the screens show the image of the Autarch multiplied many times. This is the passage of time, Autarch after Autarch. Just as I understand everything now about the shadow of the torturer, except everything connected to Agia, I understand this play generally at this point, except everything connected to Jahi.
Well, James, let me just say we'll probably have to agree to disagree about some of this stuff. I do think that you have some good points there, like at the end there where, okay, yes, right, the new land will be yours if Messi and Messian are assassinated or poisoned, then the old rule will continue, right? But they're not going to be poisoned. This is the new world that's been prepared for them. Now, the cities in Hills Fade and the Autarch is multiplied many times. I agree with you, right? That is kind of the sense that the Autarch is legion, that he has all of those personalities and that he's going to survive somehow in that. But
what about the shaman and the leafy mound?
You know who gives prophecies is the Green Man, but I really don't necessarily think that the Leafy Mound is the House Absolute. I think that might be something else. Because we even have a temple in the jungle, don't we, when they go up north in Citadel the Ark?
Think about it. The Harajuls are just coming from here. They're heading off to the past. So they have been foretold by a prophet.
Okay, but I still don't think that this play has anything to do with Typhon or Ymir. I think that it pretty explicitly is about Severian and the coming of the new sun and the future races there. And I resist any attempt to look too far backwards. And I don't even think that there's a Megatherian chained in that thing. I still think it's the Walking Tower that shows up in Citadel the Autarch because of the callbacks there and the discussion between Severian and Jonas about how do you fight something so big? You know, what is the wall for? And he's like, well, it's the defenses of the Autarch, really. And, you know, and I just feel like the presence of that tower with chains is more of a subversion of what we expect, where we all expect like a Balrog down there in chained in the you know midst of that.
I think that's just what I suggested.
Yeah, some of that I got to admit, I think you've out Borsky a couple times. So you have created illusions.
Borsky never said anything literal. I have mapped the literal history of the known time of Ymir to this part of the play
by creating scenes,
right? Wholesale.
I mean, like you say, like an allusion to something that is never like the Hyrule coming back and fighting the creatures.
Well, we know that. We know that they were almost defeated, and the Megatheri and the Skians almost got to the Citadel walls. They were almost defeated. I mean, since we don't know exactly
presented it as a sort of step-by-step war that yeah, that's like where Borsky will say, like, there's an analogy, so there must be a character that Wolfe just never named or mentioned. It must be there, just like you got scenes that must be. I'm talking about scenes, not characters, like whole sort of wars.
And then Wedge and Biggs came in
association with Borsky at this time. It's not that I haven't been compared to Borsky in the past, but in this case, I'm not drawing metaphysical analogies from symbols. I'm saying this is a story that we know.
Yeah, but I would say this, but that's a lot of work to get to something that would just flesh out a little bit more of part of the backstories, but that don't really tell us anything super useful about the whole arc of the story. Like, I mean, the only reason the play is really interesting to me is because in the context of the story, you don't have any sense of like what's actually at stake. Like this is the one place where all those sort of hints and things before tell you what's at stake, which is the future of humanity and the fate of the earth. Otherwise, there's no other place that you really know what the sun is about. If all of that work was just to kind of give us a little bit more of Typhon's backstory, that's weird.
Remember when this play is over, Severian's going to mention that he could hear the Harajulis sitting around talking about the implications of the play. They're not talking to them. This is not something they themselves have experienced. They're trying to work this out the way we are.
Yeah, they have, though. This is the future, James. This is the future.
Yeah, they know the outcome that humanity is working towards. This is the future.
So, like, you're wrong. Like, I think from my perspective, right, it's not the past that this play is really elucidating. It's the future. It's a prophecy. And the Harajuls have lived a prophecy. They know it. And they're like, yeah, that's right. You know, I mean, I think that's the conclusion that I would come to in this case. Now, another thing, though, is that Typhon works best as a really allegorical Satan figure who shows up for like one scene and is powerful and intimidating. And, you know, his backstory, the more you know about him, I mean, even though he's fleshed out in Book of the Long Sun a little bit, the less mystical and powerful he becomes. He's perfect in his role as in New Sun for what he is. Like, he's this satanic threat who tempts Severian to give, bow before me and you'll have this. I mean, that temptation in the desert there. And if you humanize that character too much in the original arc, from this to Citadel, I don't know what purpose it serves there. I mean, we do see that he encountered the Conciliator, and that makes sense as like a foil to the Conciliator. Oh, you're my old foe. That makes sense. But this stuff, I don't understand why we would need that.
Well, the Harajuls need it.
Okay.
That's because they're going there. They're on their way to the past.
Okay. But they've been to the future. I think this is about the future where they've been, so they already know this.
All right, look.
Okay.
I can't help someone who doesn't want any help.
Yeah. Okay, James, fair enough. We should have votes, like how many of you buy what Mark said? We need those kind of polls.
Yeah, Mark. Why don't we go to the Earth list and take a vote on all that?
Well, okay, I'm going to keep that to myself. My opinion about the cornerstone, and all that stuff.
The statue got me high. The statue got me high. A monument of granite sent a beam into my eye. The statue made me die. The statue made me die. It took my hand, it killed me, and it turned me to the sky. The stone had called to me, and now I see the things the stone has shown to me. A rock that spoke a word, and makes a mineral, it can't be heard. And though I once preferred a human being's company, they failed before the monolith that towers over me. The statue got me high. The statue got me high. The truth is where the sculptor's chisel chipped away the line. The statue made me fry. The statue made me fry. My cup contained a furnace where there used to be a guy. The stone had called to me, and now I see the things the stone has shown to me. A rock that spoke a word, and makes a mineral, it can't be heard. And as the screaming fire engine siren filled the air, the evidence had vanished from my charred and smoking chair. And what they found was just a statue standing where the statue got me high. And what they found was just a statue standing where the statue got me high.
Of course. We say that in course. You want to try it?
Sure.
3, 2, 1. Oh,
Of
man.
course. Oh, sorry.
Let's do it one more time.
Try it one more time.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Of course.
Of course.
Oh, man, we suck.
You guys could have just said it separately, and then
Well,
Craig could have
I
just
can
merged
always.
them together.
I
Yeah.
can still edit those two together. It'll be all right.
That's true.
Okay.
So would that suggest then that the Cumaean is aligned with the Megatherians?
They said they
No,
can. It's hard to say.
I don't necessarily think magic is at all.
I mean, she does work for the Megatherians, right? Hildebrand's going to show up and get her to help him.
We need to do some more research on that, I think.
Well, we have some time before the end of the chapter.
I mean, I feel bad because she's going to show up in a couple chapters, but yeah, the Cumaean still confuses me for a few reasons.
I think, my sense of the Cumaean, and we still have time to worry about that, but my sense of them is that they're kind of free agents. How they fit into the whole scheme, is not really clear, but they have unique powers not held certainly by the Megatherians, because they have to, their agents have to go to them for help. And maybe not even the heroes. They say they pay rent. That's what they do.
So that reminds me too of the person. Shoot, was it on Reddit or was it you? You were saying you got an argument.
Are there any actual aliens in this?
Did we forget about the Cumaean?
I didn't forget, but I just don't know enough about him to say one way or the other.
She's pretty alien though when you see like the actual description of her, like that lizard-like thing with all the eyes and stuff. And you know, that scene where she brings Apu Punch-Out forward, that could potentially have destroyed Severian. You know, like is that a malicious kind of thing, or is she working with him to make him realize what he is? I think I need to look at her motivations a little bit.
Well, the final chapter of Citadel, Severian says that kind of suggests that the witches were caught off guard. They didn't know what they were dealing with until that moment. Okay, hey, hang on. I'm going to pause for just one minute on this. This has to do with work. I'll be back in about 10 minutes here. Hold on.
Should we hit stop?
Yeah, let's hit stop, and then we'll just. Okay. That was not my intent at all.
Gives me some sort of audible signal when you do that, though. Beep, or something like that. So.
Yeah, I know. It's weird that it doesn't.
Is this going to be like one of those beam me up Scotty things where it never was actually said?
Well, that would be very disappointing. Do not speak of such thing.
So as far as the rest of the play, then we've got everything else that happens is really the Inquisitor's scene, right? Is the rest of it all take place in the Inquisitor's office?
Yeah, it takes place inside the with the Inquisitor.
So we really get one final scene in the end.
It's about 9 pages, though.
Yeah, it's the longest single sort of scene or act of the whole thing, but
I think we have enough now for an episode, right?
With this and the other bit, yeah, definitely. So, but I think if we could maybe try and
wrap it
up, whole last thing in one episode,
let's wrap it up.
Good. And that'd be 5. And then just kind of what we could do at the end is, I think would be useful, and maybe not to do yet another episode that just summarizes everything, but I think it might be nice to Mark, if you wouldn't mind, if you could come up with a good overall wrap up of your take on the play, and then James can have one. I mean, James has one here that he's got, but if we could sort of have just as a nice sort of takeaway for everyone who sat through us going through it, it'd be nice to say, like, all right, in 5 minutes, here's one way to take what the play is. I agree. And I think that'd be really cool and useful. One more, and then
okay. So Craig, do me a favor, or James, or whoever edits this. Take out some of the stuff that seems irrelevant or rambling. That Mark's a real snake asshole.